Good evening, neighbors and guests. Welcome to the Haverford Township Board of Commissioners regular session for September 11th, 2017. And the Board of Commissioners did not meet in executive session this evening. We just came right here at 7 o'clock. Mrs. Widup, if you would please take the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio? Absent.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Here.
Mr. Siegel?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Holmes?
Here.
Mr. McGarity?
Here.
Mr. Wexler?
Here.
Mr. Oliva?
Here.
Mr. Connell?
McHere.
Say present.
Here. Prior to Mr. Taylor, who is a member of the Manoa Community Church, has been very gracious and has come up each month to lead us in a benediction. Prior to that, I wish to remind all that 16 years ago, this morning, roughly at after 8 o'clock, I guess it was actually at 8:46, a plane crashed into the World Trade Center. And most of America thought, oh my gosh, how upsetting is that, a plane into the World Trade Center. 17 minutes later, America was aghast when they realized this is no accident. Shortly after that, the Pentagon, and then shortly after that, in a field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. This country was under attack. They did not care who we were. They thought of what we were, and that's why they were after us. Whether we were white, black, yellow, red, whatever religious denomination, wherever we came from, it didn't matter. They were after every one of us. And every one of us together needs to continue to pull together, continue to pray. We need to work as a country together. We need to work as a community together. And that's how government works. That's how we all work. Whenever we want anything done. There were 2,996 lives taken that day and over 6,000 wounded. 412 of them were first responders. 2,606 of them were in the World Trade Center, 125 of them at the Pentagon, and 265 of them were on the 4 flights, including 19 terrorists. It was a very tragic day. But again, our country rises to its greatest moments after our most terrible tragedies. And when Mr. Taylor comes up and serves our benediction, I would like to please take a moment to remember those on that day and those who still suffer. So please rise if you can. Taylor?
Would you please join me just in a moment of quiet reflection regarding what a commissioner has spoken about. Oh Lord, we do give you praise for the opportunity to gather here in freedom. We celebrate being able to reside in this country and to be able to elect these dedicated men who represent the wards in this township. Thank you for each person that pulls together so that activities like the music festival can go off, and like Haverford Township Day upcoming can just be a celebration of gathering in this community. Lord, we just ask for your protection and for all those who have been hurt and wounded and impacted by the events on 9/11. We thank you, though, for the healing process. Thank you for your presence, respectively, in various people's lives. We celebrate Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah for those who celebrate in that faith. We thank you for the opportunity to gather and for the chance to be involved in this community which you have established before us. And it's your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Will the Chief of Police please lead us? Pledge allegiance.
After meeting tonight, I lead you with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America. I also, we send out our prayers also for our Americans who are down in Texas and in Florida also with the hurricanes. So we hope all comes out better than expected. All right, first this evening, we are privileged to have a couple gentlemen here to speak from us from the county. And Commissioner McCluskey, if you would please have the honor of introducing them.
Thanks, Mr. Connell. As many of you know, this past year we established a Health and Safety Committee on this Board of Commissioners, in large part to address the epidemic of heroin that is plaguing this nation, is plaguing this state, is plaguing this county, and is plaguing our community. This committee was designed to work within the board, but also to work with an organization called Haverford Alliance for Drug Awareness. And the main goal of that organization is to reduce the stigma that comes with heroin addiction, and let us acknowledge that it's in our communities, and what can we all do to make it a more welcoming area so people can get help. In furtherance of that, as chairman of that committee tonight, we have the privilege to welcome District Attorney Jack Whalen to talk about the heroin task force that the county has formed via his office. All levels of government, all levels of community need to do their part, and District Attorney Whalen had an opening in his schedule and offered to come and explain to us what his office is doing with the task force. It also gives me an opportunity before District Attorney Whalen comes up to just make the public aware of an event that HOT is having where District Attorney Whalen will be one of the panelists. We're having an event at the high school on September 27th at 7 o'clock. It's being called a town hall meeting. It's for anybody who went last spring. It's a panel event where we're just going to generally discuss the issues, and we're going to have somebody from our paramedics, Haverford Police will be there. We're going to have a doctor who specializes in the area of addiction. District Attorney Jack Whalen will be there from Delaware County, and we're also going to have Executive Deputy Attorney General Rob Reed from the state. So we're really going to try to approach it from a lot of angles. But most importantly, we're also going to have a father of a former Haverford Township resident who lost a son, and we're going to have a former Haverford High School student who right now is in a successful period of recovery. And that's really where that event is going to be focused on people that are intimately involved. And I think District Attorney Whalen would agree that he's excited to participate in such an event, but also talk about the task force here tonight so that the community knows what the county is doing about the issue. So, District Attorney Whalen, if you want to come up.
Hey, it's an honor to be back in Haverford Township. I love coming here and certainly enjoy the Board of Commissioners. I want to first just say, before I start talking about the heroin task force, and then Councilman White's going to spend just a few minutes talking about some updates, I just want to recognize Chief John Viola, your Chief of Police here, and certainly Deputy Chief Joe Hagan. They did a tremendous job over the last few weeks. As most of the Haverford residents know, on Haverford Road, there was a murder. We've charged the individual with murder of the first degree. It was an individual that callously and brutally gunned down an innocent person for no apparent reason. We had no leads except that the intense investigation led to pulling videotapes from local stores and constant persistence with your police department. They were able to canvass the area, get some video footage of what they believed to be the suspect. That individual then was broadcast on local media. Then we learned that there were local Haverford Township residents that came forward, were able to give us a partial plate that matched. We were able to get an ID on that particular car and a registered owner. We were then able to put together those pieces through the great work of the police department, and ultimately that individual was tracked down after he fled to the Atlanta, Georgia area, and he was taken into custody and again charged with first-degree murder and related offenses, as well as being charged with attempted murder on 2 separate counts because of an incident in Philadelphia where he tried to gun down 2 Philadelphia residents just minutes before coming into Haverford Township. So again, to Chief Viola, just a fantastic job. The Heroin Task Force, as many of you know, was formulated in 2012 when we did see an uptick in the heroin epidemic coming in Delaware County, although I have to tell you, I never expected to reach these epidemic proportions as we're seeing today in 2017. When we put together the task force, and the task force shouldn't be mixed up with the Narcotics Task Force or confused. The Narcotics Task Force is a law enforcement task force comprised of 60 individual officers that are undercover and go throughout Delaware County in an undercover capacity to take dangerous drug dealers off the street, that is feeding this poison to our youth and individuals that are out purchasing it and becoming addicted. But the Heroin Task Force was formulated with the idea of prevention, education, and awareness, then later expanded to treatment and recovery. The 3 main components of prevention, education, and awareness was the educational aspect, and I believe that knowledge is power, and if we're able to educate the children in middle school and in high school the dangers of prescription drug medication, the opioid epidemic, and how it leads to heroin addiction, we'll be way ahead of the game, because I think they're not thinking when they use these drugs as to how dangerous they can be. So the NOTE program, which we adopted back in 2013, has become a model program throughout our schools, and to date, 30,000 students have been educated, as well as thousands of parents. NOPE always does the presentation in the evening for the parents to understand how these opioids can be so dangerous. Obviously, there's a direct correlation between opioid medication use and heroin abuse, leading to that addiction. The next area is we placed prescription drop boxes in every single police station and in most hospitals here in Delaware County. And the result of that has been collecting 18,000 pounds of unused medication throughout our police stations. And it's important to realize the reason that we do that is because there's a direct link statistically of children, young individuals that will go into their parents' medicine cabinet or their grandparents' medicine cabinet and look for addicting drugs like Oxycontin, Percocet, Vicodin. So 70% of teenagers have admitted when they have become addicted to these drugs that they've originally taken them from their parents or their grandparents or other relatives. So it's important to continue to emphasize the drop boxes in different locations. Well, that wasn't enough, and Councilman White will talk a little bit about a new initiative of the mobile drug van that's been now used to go to community events in addition to police stations. And then finally, and probably most importantly, and I want to again congratulate Chief Viola. It sounds like I'm his advocate tonight, but truth be told, it was Haverford that got out on the lead when I approached all the police chiefs. And we have 42 separate municipal police departments here in Delaware County. All of these 42 chiefs have independent authority over their police departments. I do not. I have independent authority over all of the criminal prosecutions throughout Delaware County. But when I brought all these police chiefs together, including Chief Viola, they all agreed that they would carry the life-saving drug naloxone. Now we're using nasal Narcan. So every single municipal police department in Delaware County is armed with Narcan. So if they come across an individual that is overdosing, they can immediately revive that person, get them the medical attention they need, and get them to the hospital where they can get treatment. And Councilman White will talk about the recovery after they get treatment. To date, we have 860 times the police officers throughout Delaware County have saved a life by administering Narcan. I would have never, ever expected when we started the program that it would ever be that high as I stand here now in September of 2017. And what's interesting is that, of course, Upper Darby, as would be expected, leads the way in the most doses administered. But Haverford Township is number 3 with 55 saves. 55 times officers in Haverford Township came across an individual that was overdosing and was able to save their life by administering naloxone. So again, it's just another example of how our officers not only protect our lives each and every day, but also are on the front lines and trying to fight and save lives on a daily basis. And all cars are equipped with this life-saving drug. And statistically speaking, when we look at the overdose deaths, people that are not saved by naloxone, it's alarming because in 2015, we had a little over 200 deaths throughout Delaware County as a result of drug overdoses. 50% of those people that died were heroin related, 50%. But when you look at 2016, there were 227 overdose deaths, and out of the 227, 94% were heroin. So it went from 50% to 94% from 15 to 16. Now to date, in 2017, we have over 141 overdoses. Again, 93% of those overdoses is heroin. So we have been on the front lines, and we are going to continue to fight to deal with this epidemic through all these different initiatives. But again, knowledge is important. The police activity is important. It's important to keep drug dealers in jail where they belong if they're putting this poison into our neighborhoods. But it's also important to deal with treatment and recovery issues for those that are addicted. So I'm going to ask Councilman Dave White, that chairs the Heroin Task Force with me. I am one of the chairs, but Councilman White, who's been fighting this with me each and every day, is also here. So I'd like to, at this point in time, introduce Councilman White, and then any questions, we can both field any questions that you may have after Councilman White speaks.
Thank you, Jack. And yeah, we have been doing this for a long time, and nobody thought, I think throughout this whole county, that it would be the epidemic it is, and I'm sure they across the whole Commonwealth, no one thought the same thing. And as Jack stated, we did know. We started with education, and once we got to the naloxone and Narcan, and we were saving lives, we quickly learned we need to help these people. We need to get them treatment. Otherwise, we're going to be down the same road many times. Those naloxone saves, many of those were multiple saves for one person. So we needed to get that. So we started, what we did, had a certified recovery specialist. We started with 2 people that got certified, and what they do, they go to the emergency room after an overdose, and they work with the family and the overdose victim to help them get treatment. They work through the red tape. If they don't have insurance, they work with the state, they work with the federal government to get them coverage, to find a bed for them. So if they want treatment and they need to want that treatment, we will be there to help them get that treatment, to get them on a road to recovery. We now have 3 certified specialists. We're getting 3 and 4 phone calls a day for help for these specialists. We have helped well over 1,000 people to date get on that road to recovery. Now, all of them have not been successful. I won't tell you differently. But many of them have been successful. And we will help anyone that wants that help. We will help you get that insurance, we'll help you get those funds, and we'll help you get the beds. We also learned a lot of petty thefts were being caused because people had to steal money to get the drugs. And what was happening, they were getting arrested, they were getting charged, and they wouldn't get a court date for about 6 months. So they'd go out on bond, and what they would start doing is stealing again, doing the heroin again, and a lot of people during that 6 months would lose their lives to heroin. So we worked with the courts of Delaware County and the district attorney's office, and we started a program. It's called Second Chance Court. And what this Second Chance Court does, and that started in February of this past year, that takes the person that is committing the crime, and as soon as they're charged, right when they go to the district justice level, they are giving an opportunity to get in treatment at that time as part of their bond. As long as they follow treatment and we work with them to get to those treatment and to get those beds, we will allow them to go out and bond. Once they, if they decide they're not going to go through the treatment, they don't follow through, the bond is revoked. And then they have to start all over again. But that gives an opportunity for those that were stealing coins out of cars, petty thefts, just to treat for this epidemic, to get their drugs. It gives them the chance to get back on that road to recovery. Otherwise, we are just going to be repeating this day and day and day after. As Jack touched on, we do have all the drop boxes throughout this whole county, and we collected over 18,000 pounds of drugs. That's tremendous. But we thought we could do more. So now we have a mobile drop box van, is what we call it. This van is able to go to any community events throughout their counties. What we are trying to do is make it as easy as possible for every resident in Delaware County to go into their medicine cabinet, go into their medicine drawer, get those prescription drugs that are not being used. Those prescription drugs that you were given 30 pills when you got a tooth pulled and you only needed 2. Well, if they sit in there and you have young people, there's an opportunity for those young people to get those drugs. As the district attorney stated, many of the people that are on heroin started with doing pills. We want to get them out of your house. And one thing everyone here tonight can do to help this, fight this heroin epidemic is go home tonight, go in your drug boxes, go in your medicine cabinets, get every unneeded prescription or any unneeded drug that's in that medicine cabinet, take it to Chief Viola, take it up to the police department, and get rid of it. You will make a big difference. That'll be a big step in fighting this heroin epidemic. So that is something each and every one of us can do right here tonight. We also partner with Crozer hospitals to get beds for the people that needed treatment. That was very important. We were short beds in this county. So Delaware County Council, working with the district attorney, went out and we got a $1 million grant from the state and able to have beds at Crozer. It's called the First Steps at Crozer. To date, they have had over 270 people using these beds. An unfortunate statistic, after the first week, they've been full just about every day since then. There's certainly a need for more beds, and we're working on that. One initiative that we will be announcing shortly is an opportunity. What we are finding as well, employment for people is difficult. Those that have been charged with petty thefts because of their epidemic, even though now they've seek treatment, they're not addicted any longer, they're in recovery, they're having a tough time getting jobs. We want to work with them because we do not want them to go back on the path to destruction, go back on the path to using drugs. So the county, through Heroin Task Force, will work with these young men and women to get them jobs, to put them in touch with employers. Some employers want to do the background checks. As soon as that comes up, they won't take a chance. Well, we're going to start getting that second chance for these young men and women. We believe the efforts we've made over the past 6 years, we are making a difference. We are going to win this war on this drugs and this epidemic, specifically this heroin epidemic. And for one reason, if for no other, is because we cannot afford to lose it. It has taken too many of our friends. I am sure everyone in this hall tonight knows someone, whether a relative, a child, or a friend, knows someone that is addicted to this drug and has gone down that path and knows how difficult it is to get off and out of that path. I assure you, Delaware County Council, Commissioner McCluskey, through Haverford, the commissioners of Haverford, we will all be fighting together to assure that the Delaware County residents have the ability, if they want to, we will get you on the road to recovery and make you a productive citizen of Delaware County. You'll have our word on that. We will not stop until this war is won. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming this evening. If an individual wants to reach out and they're not quite sure, where to go, if they want to, do they want to go to the DA? Do they want to go to county council? They want to go to the local police department? What's their?
Want to come to me, but
I get that, and maybe, you know, what can they do?
It is on our website. There's a number on the website that you can reach out. It'll be confidential, and we will get you that help. That number leads to the recovery specialists. That these recovery specialists are not just for those that have had an overdose and that went to the emergency room. If a family is in crisis, they know they're in crisis. If they make that phone call, the recovery specialist will come out to that house, and they will help you get through your crisis.
we've been advertising the number on billboards, on bus stops, there's
I've seen them
short
all over,
videos
right?
coming out to try to get the word out as much as possible concerning what number to call if you have someone who's addicted or know someone who's addicted to get them into treatment.
Commissioner Klusky is correct. The stigma of this disease, if you will, this epidemic, cannot stand any longer. We have to understand, we can't have our heads in the sand, that everyone is affected by this. And it does affect young, old, it affects everyone in our society.
Gentlemen, any other questions?
I don't really have a question. I'd just like to, on behalf of our residents of Haverford Township, thank you, Jack, as our district attorney, and Councilman White and County Council and Delaware County for the leadership that you've shown on this issue. It's obviously a critical issue, so we appreciate what you're doing for all of us.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Lewis.
Mr. Siegel, I understand did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, while we have the DA here and we have the chief here, at times, unfortunately, we sometimes deal with sensitive issues as elected officials. Commissioner Lewis, I, and other township officials had been dealing with such an issue over the last couple of years. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank the chief and your officers and detectives, and as well as the DA's office for the way you handled and concluded the matter. We appreciate it. It's on behalf of Commissioner Lewis, me, and the others who were involved. But I do want to thank you all because it showed cooperation and the result was satisfactory. Thank you.
Glad we were able to effectively eliminate the situation.
Thank you.
And for a long time, too.
Yes, took a long time.
Does anyone else have anything they would like to say?
No, thank you very much for coming out, guys. Really.
Thank you.
Yep, and Mr. Boyce is here also with us tonight. He's the head of the 911 Center and all the new director out there. And again, best of luck. Thank you very much for coming this evening. Did you? That's right. Well, so please, pass it on. The resources are available, and please take the opportunity to either take advantage of it or pass it on to somebody else. But you have it at the township level, you have it at the county level, you have it at the state level. It's around us, and it's a matter of taking the opportunity to reach out and do it.
Kristen, if I could just say, again, that date for the event we're having in Havertown is September 27th at 7 o'clock at the high school. And it should be a good event, and there'll be a wide range of opinions and voices there to discuss it, because it is a multi-layered issue. And, you know, there's law enforcement, there's treatment, there's family issues, neighborhood issues. It's something that we need to come together as a community as. And so September 27th at the high school at 7 o'clock.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
The last meeting we went to that you held over that was at the high school.
Yeah.
Was it at the middle school?
I was at the high school. It's sort of like a continuation of that. Like the last one, there was a movie from the DA, and then there was a panel, but we only had 15, 20 minutes for the panel, and people had to start leaving. So this is sort of a response to that, whereby, we needed more time. So it'll be the panel, and then we also got the representative from the Attorney General's office and District Attorney Whalen. So
That was really good. That last meeting was really good because it really was eye-opening to hear some of the stories and to watch that movie, which is, you should get out there and watch it.
yep.
Do you have more of those?
Thank you very much, gentlemen. At this time, do any commissioners have any commissioner committee updates? There being none, next on the agenda is the Township Auditor update.
Mr. President.
Yes, Commissioner.
Mr. President, Mr. Zlotnick has asked me to inform the public that while he is out of the country this week, nonetheless, the township staff emailed him the disbursement reports, which he reviewed electronically. He asked to convey his absence to the board and advise that he has reviewed the disbursements for the period from August 15, 2017 through September 11, 2017. Any questions that he's raised have been answered to his satisfaction, and no irregularities were found in this month's disbursements. So if that may substitute for the auditor's report, I'd ask the record to so reflect.
And there's no issues with that, right? Mr. Sisser? Yeah, I don't think so. Okay. Any questions or concerns? Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the Citizens Forum. This is 20 minutes for registered speakers and 20 minutes for agenda items. And we ask everybody who comes up to please give your name, your address, and speak at the podium for 3 minutes on whatever you would like for those who had signed up. And right now we have, our first one is Sammy Darling and Ann McCammon about backyard hens. Thank you, ladies, for coming tonight.
I'm Ann McCammon. I live at 1008 Crest Road.
I'm Sammy Darling, and I live at 823 Dover Road. We spoke at the June 10th Commissioners meeting on the issue of raising backyard hens, and we're very excited that you have considered this issue and drafted an ordinance that you will be voting on tonight. We are here to review some of the benefits of backyard hens, to give you information about how other townships regulate backyard hens, and to remind you that there are 380 other residents that support this issue.
So we called Marple Township and spoke to Joe Romano in the zoning department, and he told us that in residential zones they allow up to 2 hens per property, and in Springfield Township, hens are allowed to be raised for eggs as long as neighbors don't complain. Newtown Township has no code preventing the ownership of hens as long as they have a suitable shelter.
The benefits of backyard hens are that they eat ticks, cut down on trash because they will eat all of your kitchen scraps, your weeds, and extra plant material, and best of all, they provide fresh eggs. We have visited 3 different families raising backyard hens, and all of their coops are well built, well maintained, they don't smell, and each coop shows the family's personality. One coop had a rooftop garden, another had a metal roof, and the third had a rope swing for the hens. The owners have had no complaints from their neighbors. In fact, the neighbors enjoy the hens and the fresh eggs.
The reason that Sammy and I started this project back in early April was because we really wanted to make a difference in our community. We don't like how hens are being treated and raised commercially, and therefore we don't want to eat their eggs. So we want to promote humane and healthy ways of raising hens.
Thank you for your for the time you have taken to write up the revised ordinance, and please vote yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. Number 2 on the list, and I'm taking these as they came in order from the secretary. Mr. Brooks, Chad Brooks, speaking about Haverford Township Day.
Good evening. Annual day. The commissioners are aware of it. I hope the audience is. It's October 7th this year, and by the way, that's the latest date that it can occur. It's always the first Saturday in October. Last year, it was as early as it was come. It was the first. This year it's as late as it comes, the 7th. Tim Denny picked out a wonderful theme for the celebration, celebrating our parks. I thought it was a great theme, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I do want to emphasize that it's not Havertown Day. Sometimes I hear Havertown. It's Haverford Township Day. Westgate, Ardmore, Drexel Hill, Coopertown, Chatham Park, Chatham Glen, and our newest road tonight, Bethany Lane, Bryn Mawr, about as far away as you can get and still be in Haverford Township. I want you all to come.
Wynwood.
I want everyone to come.
Lanark.
Wynwood, Lanark, all of them.
Manoa.
I have been visiting all the township parks as part of the celebration, and I've been highlighting them on the Haverford Township Facebook page. So if you want to know something, and they're remarkably diverse, remarkably special. You have Tiny Carroll Park, probably the smallest park, but it actually leads to a trail, very interesting trail along Cobb's Creek. You have a park that I had forgotten about behind the row homes on Lawrence Road. There's a park, a small strip of green there. You have large parks like Paddock and Westgate. And I'm finding out about the individuals. There's a plaque at Westgate dedicated to Robert Wetter, 1963, who apparently founded the park. Elwell Field, I asked if anybody knew who Elwell was, and a lady wrote me and said he was a gentleman who lived in Ardmore and came to the playground programs during the summertime in the 1950s. And that's probably why the park is named after him. So the parks are great. I encourage you to use them if you're in your local park. And we have big community parks that I'll mention in a moment, but we have a lot of greenery in town, and it's a great theme this year. Starting the first event for Haverford Township Day is the 5K. This is the 20th anniversary. I can find that hard to believe, but it's the 23rd Haverford Township Day and the 20th 5K. That 5K is closely linked to the parks. It raises money for Murray Place, and Murray Place is a very special park. It's dedicated to the idea that all abilities should have access to the park experience. People can go out, even if they're in a wheelchair, right out to Darby Creek. So, and there's a facility, like a jungle gym there that is geared towards wheelchairs. And there's places that they can navigate. There's a soft area for kids that may fall down. It's a great park. It has many other uses. The skate park is there now. But it's originally dedicated to the idea of having a park. Freedom Playground is great, but this is a different experience for kids because it gets them close to nature. Some of my friends want to use a new route, but because it's the 20th anniversary, we're going to stick to the old tried and true one, which takes you down Mill Road to Caricon, and you get to experience Powder Mill Valley Park. Great park. The township now controls that entire area along the Caricon. It actually goes all the way up to the guest track and the fields there, and then comes down and begins the park right there where Mill Road enters Caricon, and then extends all the way down to Manoa Road. And you can actually continue, if you want, on a trail that goes into Fairmount Park. Part of Fairmount Park comes into Haverford Township. But the course takes you down to Caricon. It's a tough course, no doubt about it. We are walker-friendly, though. If you can only walk, please come out. Kevin, I hope you get your running community out there, the commissioners that are runners. I really would like to promote it this year and get a lot of people out. It's a great way to start your day. We do welcome baby joggers. It's challenging for baby joggers, but we do welcome baby joggers. And because of the excellent care of our police officers, it's a very safe course. It's completely closed to traffic, and you'll be very safe. Going back to the day then, the next event would be the parade. It's always a fun event. You get to see all kinds of things. Actually, the day, if you go back 23 years, on that date in October, the fire companies had a parade because it was Fire Prevention Week. Can I go on for another minute?
Sure.
I'm almost done.
You're on a roll, Chad. Go ahead.
So it started as a fire company parade, and the fire engines are still a big part of the parade. So come out and enjoy the things. Then, of course, the craft, the flea markets, the nonprofits. If you are jaded and think that the social contract is frayed, that we've lost something, come and see all the nonprofits and your opportunity to be part of the nonprofit community. And of course, lots and lots of music, children's amusements, and food vendors. Really something for everybody. And I'm just going to put another hat on real quick, put my Grange hat on. The Grange has 3 fun events coming up. Antique appraisal, $15. You get 1 heirloom evaluated by Michael Ivanovich, who has 35 years experience in antiques. If you've seen the antique show on Channel 12, that's what we'll be doing. 1 to 3, September 15th. It's very limited, so if you're interested, you should RSP, because he can only accommodate so many people. But for $15, if you have something in the house, you always wondered, is it worth anything, he can tell you. The Home Broom Hang is on September 23rd. It's sponsored by the Penfield Civic Association. It's a beer tasting of home brewers, and there's music that night. I did it last year. It's a lot of fun. Great organization, great people. Definitely make a night of it. And the place shines at night,
date was
especially
that, Jack?
in the amphitheater.
The date, what was that?
That's September 23rd.
Okay.
And the open house, the Grange's open house is October 15th, and that's a really fun event. If you have kids, you can paint pumpkins, but even more fun is making the scarecrows. You bring old clothes, we provide the hay and the stockings that you can stuff to make a scarecrow, and it was hysterical last year. Took a lot of pictures of really fun scarecrows. The kids love it. If you have young kids, they will really, really enjoy that. I highly recommend
Thank
it.
you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. Next year, when you announce for Haverford Township Day, you can actually, you don't have to do it during Citizens Forum. We can have you come in and do it just prior to, because it is a community event for that. Okay, run by the township. Thank you very much for coming this evening.
Can I just say, Mr. Connell, if anybody wants to see someone with some speed and doing a lot of running, there's the man, Mr. Brooks. He is, like me, no spring chicken, but he gets around good.
Number 3 on the list this evening is Brendan Bates, speaking about backyard hens. Mr. Bates, thank you for coming this evening.
Thanks for having me back. Brandon Bates, 71 Brookline Boulevard. First, I just wanted to say thank you. Really for 2 reasons. One, we talked about a bunch of somber, serious things, a lot of stuff going on, whether it's Harvey or Irma, 9/11, terrorist stuff. So it is nice as a community to take time and keep pushing forward with the little things. And secondly, on that note, to a person, my neighbors, my friends, a lot of people said, when I found out what was going on, said, good luck with that. Like, nothing's going to change. But I do feel like you guys have done a good job listening and researching and trying to come up with something that works for everybody. And I think the new ordinance does strike that tone. So I appreciate it and want to say thank you. A few of the other things I was going to say, the girls sort of touched on, so I'm not going to belabor it too much. 1 or 2 things I just wanted to touch on more from a personal note and how it's affected our family. The first I would say is we act a little bit differently as a family now. We don't use fertilizer. We don't use pesticides anymore. We have rain barrels that we recirculate for the garden and for the chickens. And we just spend a little more time outside with my close family, friends, neighbors. So it's been great. I just wanted to share that. The one other thing I wanted to touch on when I was going to go through the positives and sort of maybe myths, I'll touch in the second half, because there's a few things I've noticed that having chickens is not that gets brought up, and I just want to comment on that. Again, from personal experience, they don't smell. Everyone that's come over has hung out right by it and said, I can't smell anything. So I know that's been a concern, and I just wanted to touch on that.
Bless you.
And it hasn't bothered our neighbors. I know I talked about that back in June, but we had everyone sign a petition. And for us, it's really been more of a community effort and community event, so I just wanted to mention that. My last point was more for Mr. D'Amelio, and he's not here, but I'll say it anyway, because he keeps bringing up the rats or rodents. And I just want to say that hasn't been an issue for us or anyone I know that has chickens. Certainly there's rats in Havertown, whether they're in dumpsters behind restaurants or feeding on bird seed or gardens or compost. With chickens specifically, there's certainly ways that you can prevent that. So I think as long as people adhere to
the guidelines set forth in that ordinance, I think that we would be fine. So I just wanted to mention that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now take audience members to speak for agenda items. Now, last month, I started with this side of the room, so I'll start with, oh, okay. We have a last entry. My apologies. Number 4, Mr. Levin on backyard hens. Mr. Levin, Dr. Levin, thank you very much for coming this evening.
This just in.
This just in. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
Thank you. I have the ordinance, which you're expected to take a first reading on tonight, as well as the chapter for animal control that it is designed to replace. There's very little difference between the two. One area that I'd like to touch on with you is A. This is from the new ordinance, so it shall be confined in quarters, corrals, pastures, or other outdoor spaces, and no part of which shall be closer than 100 feet from an exterior limits of any dwelling or property line. Judging from the article which appeared in the Daily News, I see buildings that seem to be closer than 100 feet away and potentially closer than 25 feet from a building. I also see that the structure seems to be screened with a screen that would keep out not only flies, but using that as the standard, all flies, which would be otherwise known as Diptera, should be able to be excluded from that. Diptera means 2 wings, and that puts mosquitoes into the ball game. I also see that among the mosquitoes that there has to be water, and water doesn't seem to be brought up within this ordinance. If you have standing water, that could be a leftover, which is kept in there after dusk, and which potentially could harbor eggs from mosquitoes, which carry West Nile virus. Those are the 2 principal points that I have. As far as running at large, it's unclear whether the enclosure is designed to let the animals out, to let the chickens out during any portion of the day. So you have an ordinance that's heavy on waste control. It's heavy on rat-proof and fly-proof, or fly-tight, and I assume that this is to exclude mosquitoes as well. And the reason is that West Nile virus is one. May I have an extra minute, please?
What choice do we have?
That it excludes flies and mosquitoes, which could potentially carry West Nile virus or even possibly Zika virus. Where we see we're getting warming in this area now, there are birds that travel between not only between areas, but between regions of the country, and the state puts out chickens as one of the wildlife that would be, or one of the controlled wildlife that would be subject to these diseases. I think that has to be taken into account. Whether they're running loose whether they are exposed during the day or at night, and whether there's water in the vicinity that could serve as a hatching ground for mosquito larvae. So although I don't wish to discuss the fact that these are pets, I realize that, and I see a certain value in doing so, but I wonder whether they're being handled in such a way that they do not spread either diseases of their own, such as salmonella, which can produce things like diarrhea, intestinal diseases, and related under control. Approximately 0.2% of chickens are raised. There have been about 950 disease episodes, and about 43% of them, 14% of people look at this as saying, well, we'd like to have this too. So here you have a special ordinance which is designed for chickens. I assume you're going to have a special ordinance that will be designed for snakes if they come into play, and for other animals as well. So you're off on the road to handling wildlife which has a natural habitat into a habitat which is going to be in communities. One story about reptiles is there was a woman who was keeping a reptile, and she thought it was extremely unusual that it wanted to be in bed with her every night, until the fact was raised by a veterinarian, I think he's ready to eat you.
That was worth the extra minute.
That was pretty good. Okay, again, on this side of the room, first row, second row, third row. On this side of the room, first row, second row, second row.
Mine's related to the Haverford Task Force. That's not an agenda item, so I can certainly speak at the end. Same hesitation there, Mr. Conlon. I can certainly wait.
If it's not on an agenda item,
It is technically not on the agenda. I just wanted to-
yes, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate your honesty. Anyone else on that row? Third row? Last row? Okay, there being none. As far as the hens go, that is coming up in item number 12 this evening on the agenda, P17, 2017, regarding your matters. And when we bring it up in discussion, we will address the waste control, rodent, mosquitoes, the running at large, loose, and as far as snakes go or what have you, if someone were to come to this board and have a concern about that, we certainly would look at that. Everything has to, every ordinance usually starts out custom made. So, and that's how we would handle that one further down the road, whether it be snakes, elephants, etc. Mr. Brooks, thank you very much for coming in and speaking on Haverford Township Day, which you do every year. And please, next year, because I'm assuming that you're going to do it next year too, we could probably put you on the agenda and for the opportunity for a larger presentation. Thank you very much. Okay. That concludes the citizens' forum for this evening. Next on the agenda, we have item number 5, approval of minutes. Mr. D'Amelio is not here, so
Actually, I
Mr.
was going
Holmes?
to ask, I know we want to do minutes first, but I might recommend that we move item 12 up. There are some things between now and the current schedule for the backyard hens ordinance that may be fairly excruciating for some of the folks that are here simply for the hen issue. For instance, the RHM, which I think we're going to talk about for a while, and some other ordinances. So after we get through the approval of the minutes and the warrants, I would ask the board to consider moving on the agenda up to the new item 7, the item that is currently item 12, ordinance P17, backyard hens.
To move into number 7.
Yes, I would like to agree with that, to move that up.
All right, what we'll do is, let's go through with the other two. All right, well, then I'll do it right now. At least I'll take the motion that
So moved.
Commissioner has asked for that. It's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Then we will move item number 12 up to item number 7, and the rest will follow suit. So if we then could continue then with approval of the minutes on item number 5, on the minutes of the meeting.
Mr.
President,
Mr. Siegel,
motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of August 14, 2017.
and seconded by Mr. Wexler. Comments? There being none, please take the roll.
Mr. McCluskey?
I have to abstain, I wasn't here.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes?
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. Connell?
Yes, motion carries. Item number 6 is the approval of warrants.
Mr. President.
Mr. Holmes.
Mr. President, I move we approve warrant number 9 of 2017 totaling $3,172,293.66, comprising the general and sewer fund payroll for August 10, 2017, in the amount of $652,350.27. The general and sewer fund payroll for August 24, 2017, in the amount of $646,855.34. The general fund disbursements, number 9 of 2017, in the amount of $626,315.25. Sewer fund disbursement, number 9 of 2017, in the amount of $393,516.55. Community Development Block Grant Fund disbursement, number 9 of 2017, in the amount of $77,702.53. Capital Projects Fund disbursement, number 9, in the amount of $768,643.72. And a credit card statement ending August 27 of 2017 in the amount of $6,910.
Second?
Seconded by Mr. Siegel.
Mr. President, as indicated earlier in the in my reading of Mr. Zlotnick's report, he has reviewed the warrants. Any questions raised by him have been answered to his satisfaction. He has found no irregularities, and it is his recommendation that the warrants be approved. I agree, and it's my recommendation the warrants be approved as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any additional? There being none, please take the roll.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. Connell?
Yes. Motion carries. Item number 8, formerly item number 12.
Mr. President,
Mr. Oliva.
I make a motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance number.
Item number 7.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, item number 7. Motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance number P17, 2017, amending and supplementing ordinance number 1960, adopted June 30th, 1986, and known as the General Laws of the Township of Haverford, further amending and supplementing Chapter 49, Animals.
Oliva, second by
Second.
Mr. McGarity. Okay. Let me open up the floor. Gentlemen, comments, questions?
Mr. President, I have a question. I'm trying to understand the changes. By creating subsection C of section 4910, are we making an exception to the 25-foot rule, or are we making an exception to the 100-foot, 1-acre rule?
Mrs. Woodop, who is doing dual duty tonight?
The 1 acre rule is being accepted in here. The 25-foot setback is being accepted where there's concurrence by the adjoining neighbor where it's less than 25 feet. So these are additional regulations for the keeping of chickens.
What happens
Where's
on
the
the
neighbor
sale
thing?
of an adjoining property?
Okay.
Now that becomes an existing condition. You're buying a property with an adjoining
But if you
home
don't
with a
have,
chicken coop.
but this is going to say, unless written agreement by an adjoining property owner. Doesn't say former owner, doesn't do that. If a person moves into my ward, buys a house with the expectation that now all of a sudden we're putting a waiver in there that the other neighbor's now got to go get an agreement from the adjoining neighbor. I think this rule needs to stand on its own without this language. If it's a 100-foot setback, it's a 100-foot setback. Now you've got an exception in there in this paragraph. I can go get, now we're gonna be open up to challenges on anything that we put inside setbacks. Well, I've got the agreement of my adjoining neighbors. I don't care if it's a shed, garage, whatever now. I think it just opens it up. Mr. Byrne, I'd ask for your opinion on that as well.
Well, I mean, I see your point. I hear you. I mean, I think it could be an argument. I don't know that, I don't know that it would be really be precedent in terms of a zoning hearing, but I think it would certainly be something that could be argued.
I just don't want to create a problem.
What they do presently, right now, if you have a variance, I know when I put an addition on my home, that I went and I got the,
Yeah, but this is livestock. I mean, I'm moving.
I understand that, but I still went to the neighbors next door and got a letter from them saying that they didn't have a problem with it. And when the new neighbor moved in,
So if you're saying you got to go to the zoning board to get a variance,
I'm saying,
time the thing changes,
when,
I'll say
when,
okay.
when the next door neighbor, it was an existing unit, an existing piece, when the other neighbor moved in.
You don't have to buy the house. When you go to buy a house, you're going to see the chickens in that backyard, and if you don't want to live in a house with your neighbor has chickens, then you don't. But if you're buying a house and there's nothing in the backyard,
That's
then,
a great example.
then-
I'm the owner. Now I want to withdraw my agreement because it's affecting the sale of my house.
Well, that
I think once the agreement was made to
Yeah.
get the chickens
I got the
are
lawyers over there
there.
saying no.
No,
this
well,
says
it's
mutual
exactly
agreement.
right.
All I'm trying to do is prevent a future problem. You're leaving it up to neighbors to arbitrate this thing. If it's going to a zoning variance board, that's a whole different animal.
you're not leaving it up to. You're not leaving it up to.
You're saying let
language
it
does.
stand on its own and just say that if you want,
If you make a decision to allow your neighbor to put the thing in there, and then you decide to take, you can't. I mean, it's just like with his house. If they allow for the zoning variance to happen and they don't, they're okay with it, that the next person, but they can't tell you, well, you got to take your thing off because I changed my mind.
Yeah, but
No,
we're
when
not
you
talking
make-
about a structure. We're talking about livestock animals.
Same thing. If
Not a
you're
structure.
selling your house and the structure's too close to your house and you gave an okay for that, you're not allowed to when you're selling the house.
I gotta back up Commissioner Wexler on this issue. You could enter into an agreement in January, in September of 2017. 1 year later, you could find that your neighbors have just barely satisfied the laws we lay out here, but they certainly haven't satisfied the agreement you had that they were really gonna handle them differently. And you're suggesting that this is an irreversible decision by a homeowner, that once they've allowed chickens next door, they're stuck with chickens next door as long as they own their house. And I mean, that's a.
What I'm
do
saying
we
to
mean
you
that?
is this. What I'm saying to you is that if you allow somebody to, if you with the structure, you can't take that structure down. So it's the same thing as if Chris goes to his neighbor and says, "Look, I'm putting in there," that they go to the zoning hearing board and they say, "Oh no, we're okay with it." The structure goes in. The structure can't move. Please let me finish.
Yeah, no, I got you.
The structure can't be moved. So let's say a month later, 2 months later, you don't like it, it's blocking your sun or something like that. That structure's not going to be taken down. You've made a decision. You've said, okay, I'm okay with this, and it goes in. If it's a health hazard, of course the township is going to do something about it.
We're not dealing with health hazards. You're dealing with this situation with. I agree with Bill that you can't put this.
I know you
have
agree.
to be clear. You have to be clearer as to what people's rights are, and whether they can do this or whether they can't do it. But leaving it up to neighborhood agreements means we're leaving it up to neighborhood disagreements as well. Okay, you build a chicken coop, and 2 years later, you get rid of all your chickens and you fill the chicken coop with old vinyl LPs. Nobody cares. But it's the maintenance of the chickens. It's the maintenance of the livestock that's going to be a problem for people, not the structure that they build for it. And the agreement is not going to be about keeping the structure. It's going to be about allowing chickens in your next door neighbor's house.
But
So
you know
I-
that when you're going into this agreement, and you're the neighbor, you know that there's going to be livestock. Nobody's telling you that there's not going to be livestock. If you don't want livestock next to you, then you just say no.
So, but how do we approach the situation? The person cannot sell their house because of the livestock in there. It becomes an issue in selling their house. And he wants to void the agreement because it's a mutual agreement on his part. It's not in our zoning laws. It's not a variance. No government entity did it. We've left it so vague that it's up to a mutual agreement between homeowners. That's my concern, that down the road, you, me, every commissioner, we're going to get a call. I can't sell my house because this guy next to us has chickens or something like that. I just want to avoid a problem. I want the language to be clear enough. If it's a 100-foot setback in the law, that's fine. But now we've said, okay, you can go out and get an agreement with somebody, and now you can have a 25-foot setback. And now you've impacted the future sale of the house, future neighbors. It's got to be clear. That's my only concern. Yeah. I'm not against chickens, but I'm against tying some homeowner into preventing the sale of his house, or somebody goes in if it's not disclosed that he has an agreement with that, which could happen as well.
Okay.
So
All right.
That's my big concern.
So
even in zoning, not even non-conforming uses have infinite duration. There comes a time when those expire.
Okay, so Mrs. Widdop, now we circumvent this. But with the four chickens?
With respect to the way it's written, it comes down to whether or not the board would be amenable to allowing up to 4 chickens without any setbacks or minimum lot size. And you can eliminate that, and then just in A, under the farm animals where it lists chickens, say more than 4 chickens. And then you're talking about applying the regulations to more than 4 chickens, keeping C in place, but eliminating C6. And that would...
As we have this discussion, one thing needs to be made very clear. No matter how people vote tonight, nobody is tearing down somebody's chicken coop and getting rid of their chickens. Chickens live for 5, 10, 12 years. They can live for 18 years. And, we messed with this ordinance in 13. Now there's talk about changing it in 17. No matter what we do tonight, and I'm going to say something that's going to sound very odd. I think chickens currently in non-conforming areas that have been around for a while, and I assume these chickens have been around for a while, they're going to be kind of grandfathered out of what happens here, and especially when we have 380 neighbors and folks at adjoining properties who don't have any problems with the specific chickens that have been talked about in front of this board. We have to look at something township-wide. I have to look at something from the 6th Ward perspective. I have the densest, I have the most densely populated ward in the township, and I don't believe, even if we had a 25-foot setback from houses and property lines, that less than 10% of the homes in my ward could qualify for any of this stuff. So it's really important, especially for our audience members today, to separate what happens to these chickens versus what are we going to do as a township with regard to this.
I view the ordinance as wholly prospective, which means it only applies to future existing uses. I agree with Commissioner Holmes. I have real difficulty with the same issues that Commissioner Wexler and Holmes just mentioned, and would not feel comfortable if we would be amending the ordinance tonight. We've had to change the way Ms. Widdop suggested, because that's a significant change, and we've said that in the past, that we don't want to make those types of changes. There's a separate issue that's been brought to my attention. I can tell you I've received a large number of communications about this and talked to, and of 4th Ward residents. No one has supported it who I've spoken to, and some have raised an issue of the Center for Disease Control study that came out last October dealing with health and salmonella issues. So there are real concerns, but I don't think, one, that everyone should understand this is prospective, so existing uses remain. But two, if we're going to make the change that Ms. Widdop is suggesting, then I don't think it's appropriate to be voting on it tonight without seeing a firm version of it.
Well, this is only a first reading tonight, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
But-
so, yeah. So, I mean, even if you made a change, we could change it for the second reading.
Right.
Because I think normally what we do is introduce it at the first reading.
Right,
and
so
then-
it's going to be read
yeah,
this
it's-
time.
Yes. Mhm.
Right, so this would be its first reading, so there wouldn't be, we could change it, and it wouldn't be a problem.
But twice in the last 4 months, when I have suggested changes to ordinances that were first readings, this board has tabled those ordinances. I don't remember which ordinances they were once, even at your suggestion, Commissioner Oliva. So I think we need to be consistent in what we're doing for the public and for, because there's a
nobody has to-
significant difference between this ordinance and what would be suggested, and I would like to hear public comment first.
Okay, let's not go to following the rules, because as many of you know, by following the Board of Commissioners, we follow the rules until we don't. So, as for this, if our solicitor is saying that this is the way we should be doing it, then this is the way we should be doing it. So you agree that this first reading, everything is...
Well, it's kind of a lawyer answer, but I agree that you can go ahead with a first reading and then make some changes and have a second reading. But I also don't think there's anything wrong with tabling it and discussing it at another time or a work session. So I agree with both of you.
Yeah, Mr. Siegel's raising a different issue than whether technically we can do this. We haven't, as a board, we've only discussed this ordinance in the context of having neighbor approval, basically. And I think, I haven't concentrated on that issue until Mr. Wexler brought it up. And I do find that fatally defective in this ordinance. And I have other problems with this ordinance, honestly. Whether we change that, whether we take it out, we spent a great deal of energy 4 years ago trying to deal with this. We live, we established, certain setbacks, we had certain rules about this. And I honestly don't think that we should be legislating on the basis of literally one issue, one instance. I don't think it's good for us as a township, and especially with the fact that this is prospective. We're not dealing with the really draconian measure of then going with, going in and removing somebody's chicken coop and taking away their chickens and their pets. But it's, that said, I've got a number of problems with this. I have received some feedback from neighbors about about opposing any, let's say, expansion of chicken rights in the township.
Chicken rights.
And so, whether we vote on this tonight or table it, there are significant. I see significant issues with this ordinance, and if we vote on it tonight, I'm not going to be able to support it.
Well, I haven't had anybody actually tell me that they're against it in the 8th Ward. And I understand is what you're saying. I don't think it's one incident, though, that we're basing it on. I do believe that there are two separate incidents out there that happened to collide at the same time. There was an incident with Mr. McGarity, and then there were two individuals that came forward in the 8th Ward as well. And that was coincidental that both of those happened around the same time. It wasn't one incident. But I do remember talking about the roosters, and that was one commissioner who did bring up an issue about roosters, and then another commissioner said, oh yeah, there's a rooster next to my house too, and it drives me crazy or what have you. And then that whole issue was based on those two stories. So this is not one incident that occurred.
You don't need roosters unless you're going to breed chickens.
True,
And
but that
that's
became an
different from
ordinance.
having chickens and having eggs versus.
But that
having
issue
roosters.
came up because of the one or two incidents.
Right, but we then legislated township-wide, and we established with regard to chickens, I mean, I assume that nobody on this board right now is considering lifting the prohibition on
that's exactly what
roosters
the
in
work
Haverford
session is for.
Township. Am I right about
No
that?
one is, no, not for roosters.
But he's
no.
asking to do that, right?
No.
So let's take roosters, that conversation off the table. With regard to chickens, we dealt with and created a series of regulations that we, that we established or reestablished, I guess, back in 2013 about an acre in size and how many feet it had to be from property lines and from buildings. When you talk about 2 instances or 3 instances, we're still talking about 2 or 3 instances, 2 or 3 families out of the 17,000 families we have in Haverford Township, or the 17,000 households that we have. And I just think we have to have, and if you have people who have the support of their neighbors and aren't fighting against a township effort to tear down this coop and get rid of these chickens, then I don't think we need to act as a body, and I don't think we need to act township-wide to address what, to me, is something within the discretion of our police department and safely the province of neighbors to currently all get along.
We have, the request was to have chickens. I know in the 8th Ward, there's a fair amount of people that did sign a petition who were in agreement. So I would have to say they're for it. I haven't had anyone contact me to say they're against it. So I'm for putting in an ordinance that allows homeowners to have chickens, for eggs but not roosters.
I will say
And if
something
we
I've
need
said
to
before at these
remove
meetings.
this
just
one
'cause-
part
yeah.
of it as from the resident, then okay, that's fine. I'm okay with that too.
Just because I think it doesn't make me right, I'm just letting you know that
Yeah,
my position
I'm
on
just
it,
giving
and
you
that-
my
yeah,
position
yeah,
too,
And I
and that's-
appreciate that point. And folks in the, I mean, this may simply be one of those votes where, there's at the end of the vote, they're going to count them up, and if enough wards and enough people think this is a good idea, it'll happen, and enough folks don't think it's a good idea, it won't happen. I can raise very specific 6th Ward issues in terms of the size of our properties, and I raised I seconded the legal issue that was brought up, so that there's, so it's not just personal to the ward. I think it's ordinance wide, but we're a democracy here.
We think we're making a very substantial change we allow chickens currently, but we're taking away the 1 acre requirement, and we're taking away the 100-foot setback requirement and changing it to 25. The only thing I am against is that paragraph. If you strike paragraph 6, I have no problems, because I have had calls and concerns. I must be the next densest ward in the Pilgrim Gardens section. 25-foot setback is reasonable.
Not even close.
But
I would agree that Mario is the second densest person on the board.
But the
Okay.
25-foot setback is reasonable when we sat down and talked to the 8 or 10 residents that have called me. This 25 feet is a reasonable amount of setback from structures and air. So we're changing the 100-yard setback or 100-foot setback to 25, which is pretty substantial, and we're reducing the acreage requirement. So I've got no problem. It's just this thing with this open-ended gentleman's agreement from my neighbors is just a future problem waiting to happen. And I think if we're going to enact a township-wide ordinance, it should be able to stand for itself going forward, not having us create some thing that's going to be a legal issue down the road. Or injecting it into our ordinance.
Okay.
And that's my biggest concern.
Lori, what's your opinion on
Mr.
striking 6?
I'm sorry. Mr. McCluskey
Lori,
did it.
can you just restate, Bill's concern is paragraph 6, and you stated earlier a solution to that. Can you just restate that again so it's clear?
In order to make paragraph 6 come out.
If you look at A in the ordinance, A already, in its existing form, exempts chickens from having the 100-foot setback, because the 100-foot setback is for large animals and farm animals except these things, and included in the list would be the chickens. So the chickens are subject to a 25-foot setback under B. They're also subject to the 1 acre minimum. but the setback is 25 feet. What I was suggesting was you can do it under either maintenance or under the definition of farm animal. You can revise the definition of farm animals to say 4 or more chicken, or up to 4, over 4 chickens, I beg your pardon.
Up to.
And then have C in place and eliminate, strike sub-paragraph 6, and keep the other 9 regulations for up to 4 chickens maintained as pets for non-commercial production of eggs in backyard.
Setback for up to 4 chickens.
There would be no setback for up to 4 chickens then.
Wouldn't it be
Lori,
25?
I don't,
25
see
feet?
that.
I don't,
Lori, I don't agree with your reading of A.
no.
Chinchillas, after the word chinchillas is a semicolon. The exception is rabbits, hares, guinea pigs, rats, mice, or chinchillas. Chickens, duck, geese, guinea fowl, domestic fowl, swans, and turkeys are all subject to this confinement.
Okay.
Take out the exception. Got large animals, farm animals, chicken, ducks, geese, guinea fowl, domestic fowl, swans, or turkeys. I mean, we certainly don't mean to accept turkeys from the thing.
I think that's probably a typo, because if you look, oh no, it's in the original
No, I'm looking right at
text.
it. I'm not
Yeah.
looking at our, yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
looking
No,
at
it's
ours.
in
I'm
there.
looking
It's
at
in
the
the
code.
text. You're
It's in
right.
the text.
Text, so I don't,
Well, I'm open to any suggestion. As you know, Nancy was here and offered regulations from several municipalities. We can revisit that.
The
And
ordinance.
she also provided some regulations from Penn State Extension and other state provisions.
The ordinance committee is trying to meet before the next meeting to address the simple issue of trucks.
I don't
So
think this
could
needs
be-
to go in front of the ordinance
No,
committee. This is
I don't
something
think we
the
need
Board
to
of
move this
Commissioners
to an
needs to
ordinance
tease.
committee. I mean, I think this
Yeah.
is a specific concern with one paragraph in an ordinance. I mean, I think,
Well, I still think if we just reel it back to what is the will of the board? Does the board want to allow, without a 25-foot setback, the maintenance of up to 4 chickens as a pet? And if it does, we'll get in there and we'll modify the language and make an adjustment in the definition. If it does not, then, we're back to the drawing board.
I'm for the suggestion of up to 4, or, more than
With
4.
25-foot
For the
setback.
25-foot setback, and I would agree with Commissioner Wexler's suggestion. Strike that provision.
strike that.
Strike that provision requiring neighbors'
a
approval.
25-foot setback is 25 feet from all directions, right? So I'm basically, anybody living in the center of a block has to have this coop 25 feet from their house, 25 feet from their western boundary, 25 feet from their northern boundary, and 25 feet from their eastern boundary, right?
right, you need, I mean, that's what we talked about. I mean.
You need a
the
50-foot wide backyard and a 50-foot deep backyard
The
to have a
overwhelming
chicken.
majority of houses in Haverford Town, you would need some sort of exception to the 25 feet. And I think paragraph 6 here is trying to provide that exception.
I don't know about the overwhelming majority of houses. I mean, I've got
5
small,
feet is-
I've got 10th-acre lots in the 6th ward. I live on a 10th-acre lot in the 6th ward, but I mean, that's about as small as our properties get.
Right, but 25 feet to the right or left of a house, I mean, you're talking about the center.
No,
so you
property
don't-
line.
From the property line.
25 feet from the property line.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if they have I don't know how big chicken coops are, but let's assume that they're less than 10 feet wide. If
how
you've
big
got a
is it?
60-foot backyard, you can get in there.
What we,
25 feet in both directions, as long as you got 25 feet in both
Right, but
directions.
so you're
from
saying
property
60
lines.
feet wide?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's a lot of houses in Haverford Town that have enough room for that to not have it in the middle of their living room.
If we have no setback requirements, as this, I mean, right now, this is written that you don't have to have a setback requirement if you have the approval of the neighbors. I don't support that, because that is a recipe for disaster. In terms of passing on property and agreements and people trying to enforce this, I think that's a mistake. Suggesting that there's no setback requirement to keep 4 chickens in the backyard, in particular, the houses in our neighborhood, in the 6th Ward, you've got backyards that aren't much bigger than our table here, and you're going to have no rule at all other than how they have to maintain them to have 4 chickens in that backyard.
I think, I'm sorry, go ahead. Going on the same thing, if you made that setback 20 feet, and a good number of the lots in Haverford Township would be included in that, because a good number are 50 by 150 lots.
Right.
I know there's lots that are smaller, but if we made the setback 20 feet, that means in a regular lot in Havertown, you could have chickens. That would give you 20 feet from one side, 20 feet from the other. You got a 50-foot wide lot. That means your chicken coop could be as large as 10 foot.
How about 25 foot from a neighboring structure? So get rid of the lot line. It's got to be 25 foot from my neighbor's house. I don't really care about my own house, right?
Yeah, but that could be.
But then you got to have a minimum.
That could be on your property line.
25-foot setback.
Your neighbor's house could be
You still
25
have to meet our zoning setback requirements. You need 5 feet for a shed, 10 foot for a garage or something, whatever. You can't have a shed within 5 feet of your setback.
We have to have real buffers here. These chicken
That's why we shouldn't be voting on this now. We've got 5 conversations.
Yeah, I'd make a motion that we table, send it back to the committee. My motion's to table now to get the language.
Second.
Can I just add before, I just wanted to say, we were talking about before, the Chris Connell brought up about people in this ward and all that. I have received 3 people who are opposed to it. I mean, Mr. Bates had a petition with about 100 names on it, and I've received about 5 calls in favor of it. So I just wanted that to be known.
Okay, so the motion that was made was that it was tabled by Mr. Wexler, and it was seconded by Mr. Siegel. So at this time, I will call for a vote. For a motion to table.
Mr. McCluskey?
No.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
No.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
No.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
No to table.
Mr. Connell?
No to table. Okay.
I would just like to add that.
So let us continue.
This is what we're supposed to be doing, is discussing this. This was supposed to be discussed at the work session and then discussed at the meeting. So when it was discussed at the work session, I believe I was told that whatever time it takes to do something, we're here to do that. So we should really work on this and get it to where there's an agreement, and then move on from there. So I just want to add that to the.
I would just like to reiterate that point, because that's the whole purpose of the work session. I mean, we want to have a healthy discussion, clearly, about all issues, but, the work session is where this should be done, not here tonight having another lengthy discussion about this. This should have been done the work session last week, and it wasn't. So I would just urge my colleagues going forward that that's the purpose of the work sessions.
I thought this was talked about 2 work sessions ago.
What?
I thought this was talked about at the August.
It's been talked about numerous times, but my point is, not just this issue, but any issue. I mean, we should discuss them thoroughly and have some resolution before we come to
I
these
agree
meetings.
with it. And it makes sense at the work session to have the printed copy of the ordinance.
We didn't
as
have the
stated.
ordinance.
We were talking about general things.
Okay, well, I agree with you about that, Bill.
Comes
I
out
agree with you about that, Bill.
But that's an important point. I mean, I appreciate both your points, but
Yeah.
I mean, did anybody see the ordinance before Friday?
No. No one
It wasn't
had.
attached last
Well,
week.
We never had a draft until this,
The draft was sent out yeah.
with the agenda,
With the
which
agenda.
came out Thursday. That's the point. Normally at a work
come out
session,
last month?
we have a draft.
Got to make sure the
The
ordinances are
hypocrisy
part of
here
the
is
work
just palpable.
sessions.
Part of the work
Yeah.
session,
They're part of the work sessions.
I mean, we're just not ready to do it. There's no pressing desire to do it today. Because I'd rather have the language correct to prevent future litigation over selling houses over, I mean, how many times you get called about easements behind a house? Oh, I have an easement. Where's a copy of it? And they're fighting over people going behind houses and using trails behind there and storing lawnmowers and get landscapers, using a road behind it. I just want to avoid that stuff. It should be clear, concise, to stand up for the next 50 years as an ordinance, not to come back and have to change these things willy-nilly all the time.
Let's see what's Chris going to do here.
I'm checking on the setbacks.
Well,
Ms. Wade,
whatever happens tonight, I mean, we've tried to table the ordinance hasn't been tabled. So we're going to have a vote on this ordinance or some amendment, depending on what happens here.
Lori, what about
This is second reading.
Commissioners?
This is going to be on
Webster?
television. I imagine there's going to be a story about this in the newspaper. I suspect.
Sure, if you say so, it will be.
I suspect.
Forward to that one.
Seems to be a little
I
favoritism there.
suspect that before the next meeting, we'll all get some feedback from our respective constituents as to, the chickens.
Well,
When the health department
already
came,
have.
she said the adjacent townships had it, but they all had 25-foot setbacks. Now we're given an exception, so I don't really.
Why don't we do what about his suggestion that we do it from the neighbor's, closest neighbor's structure?
Provided it meets the zoning code for other setbacks.
That would work, wouldn't it? Unless you have a.
would prefer
so what's a
Mario's
set-
20
What's a
foot
setback
setback.
on like a garage on somebody's property?
Well, garage can be 5 feet off of the property.
Okay, so that would give you somebody had a 50 foot wide lot and the neighbor had a 5 foot, the garage was 5 feet from the side yard, you'd have room, so.
Yeah, you could still get it
I
in
would
there.
think that you would want to go with at least the same setbacks for the principal structure, if you're going to do that, because if a house can
principal
fit on
structure.
that lot, whatever zoning district it's in, you're just following a minimum setback for the zoning district.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the main, we've gotten sidetracked a little bit here, and I don't want to just keep pushing this off month after month. We spend a lot of time talking about chickens for 5 straight months. The only issue that I'm hearing from the majority of people is this issue of unless written agreement by adjoining property owners, right? So if that's our issue,
Strike it.
let's take that out, and we can make it 20 feet or 15, or, we can make it so that it's agreeable, and we don't have that problem of the ambiguity, because Bill's right, if we leave it to just property owner agreement, we're going to have ambiguity further down the line. But I don't know if we need to take this entire ordinance and just keep pushing it off to strike 4 words.
Okay. I'd be amenable to that, and a 20-foot setback,
And strike that section.
and a 20-foot setback from the
okay with
property
that
line,
as
because then
And,
most.
and the reality is, we probably don't want them closer than 20 feet, even with neighborhood agreements, because that would inevitably probably lead to problems down the road, right?
Okay, so I'm clear. To address a point that Commissioner Holmes made earlier, we would modify A so that we would put on the exempt side of that semicolon, up to 4 chickens, and then after that, more than 4 chickens on the far side of the semicolon, where we define what is exempt from the
No,
setbacks and what is.
I don't think we have to
There needs
change
to be
it.
a motion to amend.
We don't need to change A at all. Oh, yeah, we're just talking, but, I mean, I don't think we need to change A at all. I mean, I could be wrong, but we could just take out unless unwritten agreement by adjoining property owners, take that out, and make the minimum 20 feet, right?
Right. I agree with Commissioner McCluskey that A regulates chickens, unlimited. A regulates chickens, 100 feet and an acre, right? So, but C is an exception, up to 4. And, you can easily just say up to the 4, that less than an acre, subject to the following regulation, and instead of 6, saying must conform by written agreement, it just I mean, just get rid of unless written agreement by parties through submitted.
Okay.
And then you've got
20 foot.
A still works. You can't raise 12 chickens
Right,
on
and
a
then you
property
change
that has
that.
less than an acre, and it's got to be 100 feet away from everything. But we're saying you can raise up to 4. Now, I don't know whether anybody's interested in moving. I don't know if 4 is a magic number with chickens, if they're too lonely, if there's only 3 of them or 2 of them. I know that 1 is a problem with chicks and with with little chickens and all that stuff.
I think you'd only have 4 dogs, so.
Yeah, I think 4 is.
Yeah, but, okay, remember, dogs live inside house. This is something everybody has to remember. As much as we want to talk about chickens as pets and things like that, when chickens move in and sleep in your bed with you and walk around the house and only get walked on a leash, then they're pets. For right now, these are outside animals that live in coops year-round. So we can't compare them to cats or dogs, or snakes, for that matter, okay? I'm fine with removing the language in 6 that creates an exception. C is an exception. I'd like to maintain 25 feet, but I mean, if you're saying that takes 95% of Haverford Township out, if you want to do 20.
I'd be okay with doing 20.
But that's got to be 20 feet from property lines. That can't be 20 feet from somebody else's house.
No,
That's gotta
20
be
feet from the
20
property
feet
line.
in.
Yeah, right here, we changed 25 feet. I'm sorry, I'm pointing to the screen that nobody can see. 25 feet.
In number 6.
Yeah, number 6,
C6.
from minimum 25 feet to 20.
Does the zone, Lori, does the zoning, is that what governs accessory structures and setbacks? Our zoning board and zoning laws?
It does.
Isn't that where this belongs then? Just amend
No.
our zoning law to include accessory
No,
structure?
that's not
But
where
this
it
is
To me, it's
control
no
and confine. This is animal control. This is chapter
No,
49.
I know, but it's a structure. It's an accessory structure. It's got to be mentioned in there. Mario said, if you apply for a variance for an accessory
That's
structure,
like
for
a-
a chicken coop.
Like your lawnmower, your trash can is an accessory structure.
No.
I mean, it's not a
structure.
garage is
Not
an
a structure.
accessory structure.
It's not a structure, but it's
What's that?
a garbage can.
Well, you know what I mean.
I don't think I don't see any problem, Bill, with keeping this in animal control. We do want people to be able to find we
Oh, no, it can
codify
be
our
in,
laws
it
the
can
way
be in
we
there.
do.
That would
It's,
just
got,
get
it's also got to be,
ridiculous.
somebody's going to go challenge the zoning on it too at some point.
So what's the latest recommendation? 20 feet, 20
rural
feet?
area.
Commissioner Holmes, you can live with that, and Commissioner Wexler, can you live with that, 20 feet?
Minimum of 20.
Live with 20 feet,
Foot
no
setback?
agreements. I mean,
No
it's-
agreements?
I think you're just
Okay.
opening the world up to.
Okay.
Okay, who seconded? Jimmy, you seconded my motion?
What is it?
You seconded my motion? Did
Yes,
you
he
second
did.
the motion?
What was your motion?
The motion we've been talking about.
So, the chickens are frying me
Right.
here.
The-
Ordinance.
the mo-
The ordinance in front of you was
They're complex.
Mario would need to make the motion to amend.
Why don't you make the motion?
Mr.
I'm gonna
Oliva
make the
moved
motion
the
to
ordinance,
amend
And it was seconded by
and
Mr. McGarry.
remove the language in.
I just reread the, what.
You have,
Mario
They both did.
Okay. I want the, in C, removed the language for the property, for the adjoining property owners. And then in 6,
20 feet.
the minimum
the minimum setback for 20 feet.
setback changed to 20 from 25.
From 25 to 20.
I'm sorry, from 25 to 20. I have backwards.
Second.
Back to 20? Is that what you said?
Yeah, back to 20. He has the second.
Oh, yes.
Is that
Why does he
okay
have to
with you?
second? Yeah,
Okay, so Jimmy approves that.
okay.
Now we can vote on it.
wait, where's the 20-foot setback?
In 6.
Yes, but remember, all the 25-foot setback in C6 refers back to B. So is 4910B changing to 20 from 25? Because that's a lot more than chickens. That's all small animals. That's turkeys, geese, ducks, pigeons, except for homing pigeons. Do the pigeons, homing pigeons even, aren't they? Or carrier pigeons. Which ones are extinct?
I don't know.
Large animals and
One of them are.
Rabbits.
But, I mean, so rabbits, hares, guinea pigs, rats, mice, chinchilla. I don't know who's raising chinchilla. So, I mean, are we changing 4910B to 25 for everything, or are we just making an exception in
I think it's up
C?
to 4 chickens in C that the 20-foot setback.
It's
All
under
right.
C.
Then
For
we're
up to
going
4
to
chickens.
delete the reference to 4910B, or keep the reference, but say where 4910B refers to 25 feet, 4 chickens in C is 20 feet.
Correct.
And take out the neighbors.
And take out the neighbors.
So, C6, it is revised to read, the coop and attached pen must be set back a minimum of 20 feet from an adjoining property line. Is that correct?
Maintain, and it has been.
Should be the setback from your property line.
And the exterior limits of any
Property line.
dwelling, right? And they have to be 25 feet from the house, right? 20 feet from the house.
20 feet from the house, too. That,
Right, well, that would be in 49. That would be
right.
up here.
Okay.
How far is
49,
20 feet?
10A.
Pardon what?
Is Amy 20 feet from me right now?
No.
6 yards.
She's probably about 15.
Is what?
The hair under 7 yards. Is Amy 20
She's about
feet from me
15
right
feet.
now?
She's about 15 feet from you.
Yeah,
Oh.
count the tiles.
No, I would think it's more than that.
So from you right now?
20 feet to Amy's, right over the township of
7,
Haverford.
8, 9,
14.
10. It's 4 feet less than Amy.
They're 2-foot tiles.
They're, yeah,
Right. 2-foot tiles.
10 tiles.
So from the township of Haverford sign to Amy's, 20 feet. 10 tiles.
Look, in the interest of the work that's been done by folks to compromise tonight and do this, I will vote for these amendments, but this is a first reading, and between this first and second reading, we all, we all need to look at our own wards, we all need to look at what the real ramifications of this, and understand that we are doing something township-wide here that just may have ramifications that we don't intend.
Sure. And
So I
as was
reserve the right to
original
come
one-
back in a month and say
Yeah.
I'm
You
not
have-
for this.
That's why I'm not comfortable voting for it now.
What's that?
That's why I'm not comfortable voting for it now.
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Siegel, but I do think people have been waiting a long time, and I wasn't at the August work session when we talked about these things, and I do think there's a real problem that we did not have this ordinance in hand until now, because a lot of this could have been saved.
I agree.
But a lot of that was, I mean, that issue of having a neighbor sign off was talked about 3 months ago, because I was the one that brought it up. So that's not something new.
I never saw it in writing, so I
So,
don't
but anyway,
Okay. Wait, let's
All right, with
let's
that
call
there,
roll.
then would you please take the roll?
Mr. McCluskey,
Yes.
This is item number 7.
Mr. Siegel,
No.
Mr. Lewis.
yes.
Mr. Holmes,
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler,
No.
Mr. Oliva,
Yes.
Mr. Connell,
Yes. Motion carries. The first reading on the motion carries.
Painful.
Next on the agenda, we have item number 8, which is the library planning process
Coming.
Mr. President.
authorization.
A motion to authorize the Library Board of Trustees to proceed with the planning process for library renovations. The Library Board of Trustees will provide regularly scheduled updates to the Board of Commissioners, and I'd like to add the township staff and township manager.
Second.
As you know, the library new president of the Board of Trustees was here at our work session, gave a presentation. Mr. Goldsmith is here tonight as well. They need to get on with the planning process, the architect and so on, to keep going, and have delayed their project until we're completely done with the new township building, and the staff has moved out of the current structure so that we can reuse this facility and the township building for that. So I think it was pretty clear-cut and straightforward. I think our township manager was just looking for a vote of approval for him to work with the library and the Board of Trustees.
Mr. Wexler, this came up at in the work session, and there was You know, there was conversation about, just what is authorized and what isn't authorized. We got to make clear, they're talking about, preliminary expenses at this point that are not insubstantial, but we're not talking about $5 million borrowings and hiring the general contractor. We're still talking about preliminary work here. This board still has to approve the construction of this project.
Yeah, we have the normal approval process with any contract, but they've got to pick up their pencils again, because now they've got a definitive timeline as to when they can actually do the renovations. They've requested to delay the renovations until the following August to allow them to use the library during their busy time, which is the summer, with all the summer programs. And that dovetails well with our borrowing plans, according to Amy. And so it makes it easier for the township, keeps our interest, level, as opposed to doing big borrowing all at the same time for the other projects that we have on there. So I think it's a well thought out and organized process to do that, that the Library Board of Trustees is doing. And I think our township manager was just looking for that. We will still approve that. And they have already given the township $500,000 out of their funds to do that, to start paying some of the upfront expenses. So they've told the architect to stop, and they'll do their planning and come back to us and through the staff there. We've already approved the renovation project. It's just a matter of now we've got the timing in the right area, and the expenditures will be coming that we had planned on, but in an organized fashion, targeting closure in August of next year and then going forward.
Just so I can be clear here, we're still talking about architecture, we're still talking about planning. We are not talking about hiring any contractors, and we're not talking about
That's
hiring
correct.
any construction managers. Is that correct?
Correct.
So we don't know who's going to do the work on the library. Is that correct right now?
We don't know who's going to build it. We
The
don't know who's gonna
architect is doing
manage
the
it.
work. The architect will prepare the RFPs.
But I mean the construction.
Yeah, there's been no bid.
There hasn't been, no.
We're months and months away from a bid process to be
Yeah.
initiated.
Yeah.
We're at the point now where we want to get the architect back involved to get us to the bid process, to a bid writing.
That's all. I just wanted to, because we talked more broadly last week, and I just didn't want people to have the wrong impression. We're not approving the construction of the project tonight. We're telling these folks that they can pick their pencils
I
up.
think the main reason for the vote, since we already approved the project, was more for our township manager to get a feel that the Board of Commissioners is fully committed to this project. And I believe, since we've already allocated the funds, we are. So.
That's my sense. Yeah, that's my sense as well. In addition, I just want to say, and I've met with Mr. Goldsmith, I've met with Ms. Nacito and numerous other library staff members, and I am as comfortable now, or probably more comfortable now than I've ever been, with the direction of the project, with the leadership on the board, and I think they deserve a vote of confidence, because the library has taken great strides in the last few months, and just hearing what Mr. Goldsmith has done in research in his new role, I was tired just listening to it, and I commend him and the board for really moving this the right way.
I think the board's doing a lot. I'll echo that. We've still got, what we still think, is an interim library director. Mrs. Rosita's been appointed. She's the director, but I think the Board of Trustees is still committed to going forward and doing a regional or statewide or even national search for the library director. It's going to take us into this next 50 years with the new building and go there. So I think they've got a lot on their plate. Not only are they renovating the building, but they've also got a large-scale search to go. I think they've got the people in place on the board to conduct that search. They've got the expertise on there to do it, and I think under Mr. Goldsmith's leadership, I think it'll get done. It'll get done quickly, and we can move forward, and it'll be less of an issue with us than we thought originally. So,
And it gives them time to commit to fundraising, which they need.
I was very impressed with Mr. Goldsmith and what has been going on in the library. But the proof of that is I spoke to Rochelle before the meeting started, and I asked her how she felt about the board, and she was had a smile on from ear to ear. So that means the board is heading in the right direction.
Correct.
So I'm very happy to vote for this and give them a vote of confidence, because Phil really has that board together.
right. I mean, I think under his leadership, we're great, but let's remember, these guys and ladies and men are all volunteers. They've done yeoman's work under the last couple of years, even under the previous leadership. There's been a lot of work to get us to this renovation point. So I think, it's a tough job. And their board meetings are kind of like ours. Not everybody agrees, and they agree to disagree sometimes. But a lot of work was done by a lot of people, and now we're at the point where we're going full bore. So I think it's a good time for us. So, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mrs. Widout, would you please take the roll?
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yeah, my vote can change, but that will depend on the construction of the library. But for now, I vote yes.
Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. Khan?
Yes, the motion carries. Item number 9 on the agenda is 2018 minimum municipal obligation.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to accept and certify the 2018 minimum municipal pension obligation for the police and non-uniform defined benefit plans and non-uniform defined contribution plans.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Siegel. Discussion?
Mr. President, our finance director, Cuthbertson, had addressed this with us last week at our work session. This represents each year the bare minimum necessary that the board has to acknowledge as what it has to its contribution obligations for the police and the non-uniform defined benefit plans, as well as the defined contribution plans. It is a number based upon the state's minimum requirements of maintaining our fund health and viability. We will, because we have in the 12 years that I've been on this board, we will fund more than that, which is part of what has made our pensions much more sound than those of similarly sized municipalities around the state. So this is necessary for us to do, required by law, but we will, in the budget higher amounts than this for our pension obligations.
Is there anything additional? Thank you, Commissioner. Mrs. Widout, would you please take the roll?
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. Connell?
Yes, the motion carries. Item number 10 is P12, 2017.
Mr. President,
Mr. Siegel.
motion to adopt the second reading of ordinance P12, 2017, accepting dedication of a certain street identified as Brittany Lane, Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, as public land.
Second?
Seconded by Mr. Oliva. Comments, discussion?
Just for the background, this is, as we talked about last month, sort of cleaning up something that never got done. But I'm happy for the residents, assuming we approve this, because they've been working on this for 8 years. I looked, and the first communication with it was 8 years ago, and then until they were able to get the legal end done and clean everything up with the township. But I think finally they're happy that their street is actually a public street, assuming we vote for this.
All righty. Anything additional? There being none, please take the roll.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. Connell?
Yes. Congratulations, Brittany Lane. Okay, motion carries.
None of them are here tonight.
Item number 11 is ordinance P15, 2017, RHM.
Mr. President, make a motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance P15, 2017, approving an ordinance signifying the intention of the Township of Haverford to renew and continue the jointly organized municipal authority known as the Radnor-Haverford-Marple Sewer Authority with the townships of Radnor and Marple, all of Delaware County, Pennsylvania, to be organized and existing under the provisions of the Municipality Authorities Act of 2001, the Act of June 19, 2001, Public Law 287 as amended, 53 PS, subchapters 5601 to 5623, setting forth the Articles of Incorporation, confirming the appointments of the members of the Board of the Authority, confirming the compensation of the members of said board, authorizing and directing the execution of the Articles of Incorporation, and the doing of all things necessary and appropriate to effect and reestablish the said authority, and repealing or rescinding all ordinances or resolutions or parts thereof which are inconsistent herewith.
Second?
Oh, wait a second. Seconded by Mr. Oliva. Discussion.
I have just nits in the ordinance. The township commissioners are all identified. The Township of Radnor identifies their commissioners and then lists their address as the township address. But our Township of Haverford lists all of our home addresses and doesn't list our ward numbers. I would recommend that, although everybody knows where I live, that all of these commissioners should be, their address should be their township buildings and not their home addresses. And that at least for Haverford, since we are elected geographically, that our ward should be on there. I'm looking at page 4 of the ordinance.
I think to be consistent that, Marple looks like they have home addresses as well.
And some of our addresses are wrong anyway, so.
Right. Oh, are they?
Yeah, my name was spelled
Let's
wrong,
talk about
too.
this for an hour.
It's been fixed. But I concur, because, I mean, this is a long-term agreement. The address should be the township address, not the...
Right. And it should be and it should identify, remind me, are Marple and Radnor, are they, do they have ward numbers or are they at large?
No, they have ward numbers. Marple does, I know.
Yeah, I think
I would recommend that.
I think Radnor does
And I'm
as well.
scratching my head as to figure out the order of these, because it doesn't match the sign. It's not by number, and nor is it by height. And I hate to think that it's level of obnoxity from least to worst, because I'm at the bottom. So I would suggest, other than our president and vice president, that we go in the numerical order of our wards. But
And most times, that's what we do, go in numerical order.
yeah, that's why I have a
Yeah,
feeling
you're
this
right.
was one of the other. Did one of the other townships draft this, or the authority?
No,
drafted
the
it?
authority
Said-
drafted this.
drafted it.
Yeah.
All right, well,
So then we'll change to the representative being of the ward, and then the
Yeah.
township building, administration building being the
it's
address.
our address, yeah.
Well,
May
you're
as well
right.
use the
For
new
right
address,
now, it's- till we
I would
move in,
asterisk it. I would say
The
through
new-
2017, and note the new address of the building. Like you said, this could be a 50-year ordinance. They might look at
I
the
would wait until
parking
we
lot
take
and say-
actually possession of it before we change it.
Well, we do own it. It's not like we're buying it.
that's true,
You
but-
know, we already own the site. We're kind of stuck with it, I
Yeah,
think.
the address is not going to change. Any other comments?
I'm waiting, making sure Mrs. Whittup has what she needs.
I do.
Okay? Anything further? There being,
Whoever proposed it, if they'd agree to those amendments, and whoever seconded it, approve them as well.
I have no problems, and we can take this to Mr. Toll and the authority who drafted the ordinance.
and Mr. Oliva, no issue?
Nope.
Those changes? Please take the roll.
Mr. McCloskey?
Yes.
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Yes, with those changes. Motion carries. Item number 12, ordinance P16, 2017, Parks and Rec. Ordinance P16, 2017 for Parks and Rec. It's a first reading.
Mr. President?
Jimmy or you?
Mr. Siegel.
Motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance P16, 2017, amending and supplementing Chapter 126, Parks, Playgrounds, and Township Property, Section 5, certain activities permitted in parks by permit only, is hereby amended by reducing the number of persons engaged in parties or gatherings to 15.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Wexler. Discussion? comment?
Yeah, I want to ask you, though, I'm just curious, because we have these different things like Kelly for music in the parks. Would that pertain to this or no?
Well, they already get permits
No.
already.
Yeah, they get a permit
Yeah, but it
already,
says
Jimmy, puts
15
the number,
people.
Yeah.
It's not limited to 15. It's up to, now that if you have 15 or more, you need a permit. We're changing it from if you had 25 or more. So we're just lowering the threshold at which point a group needs to seek a permit. Because Parks and Rec thinks that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean,
And it's consistent
essentially
with
what-
other
what-
townships.
What Mr. Deddy said before, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't
we're
want
just
to put
taking
words
the
in your
number,
mouth,
It
but
used to be 25, and we're just making it 15. If you have more than 15 people, you have to get a permit.
So, okay, so Kelly's okay, he just needs a permit, okay.
Tim, does this include, I mean, things like the seniors play pickleball daily,
They have a permit.
so that's permanent?
Yeah,
If I-
yeah, for
if
the
I take-
time that it's their time.
If I take my CYO basketball team over, I need a permit now to play at Bailey Park, or?
Excuse me just
Well, if you have more
one
than
second. I
15,
know we're having a...
that's the whole issue.
Mr.
You know,
Denny,
teams
hold on one
organize-
second,
I'm
just
sorry.
one second. Are you getting all the voices back there? No. Okay. If you want to take a mic, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Because you know, that will be a phone call too.
Well, just jumping in with Mr. Denny, I mean, I think the issue is, 25 is a large number, so if you're having a small birthday party or if you're taking your CYO team, you end up going to the park, and then you have two of those baseball teams showing up at the same time. I mean, that's the problem they're looking to avoid, right?
Correct, yeah. There's kind of the three parts to it. The issue you just said, somebody showing up and taking over the whole Bailey Park because they've got, 20 people, and so nobody else can use the courts. Get a permit, you're fine, but without a permit. Two is the pavilions. They become so popular. You have people showing up for your birthday party, somebody else shows up. So we're saying if you have more than 15 people, get a permit. And the turf field up at the reserve is another area where we have literally organized games of adult men showing up with referees and the whole bit. And we're just saying it's getting so that you're showing up and there's already somebody
already has it.
and we don't know that they're there, and it's a pretty big group. You can have 22 guys playing soccer. That's a big group, and they've pretty much taken over the field. And so we're not trying to stop the neighborhood games, the kids going out, anything like that. We're just trying to think that number just gives us a better sense of what's going on at the parks and trying to avoid some of the conflicts that we're having. It's not trying to stop anybody. It's just trying to have a little more sense.
You satisfied with that? Okay. Thank you. Sorry to make you walk all the way over, but
Is this,
you're our Director of Recreation. I figured there was only...
Tim,
certain-
Mr. Denny,
and
if
assistant
you just go
township
to
manager.
Mr. D'Amelio's mic, if you want to answer this. Is this something, I mean, all of our ordinances get advertised and everything, but is this something you need to put in the newsletter and remind folks?
I don't think so, no. I mean, we always tell people when they call for a permit or if they call to find out, we say it's on the website, so we can certainly put it on the website, but generally all that kind of information, if you're looking to have an organized activity, you're going to contact us anyway. We certainly will put it out, on the website, and even in the next, we'll be sending it out to all the groups that we deal with all the time. So any way that we can prevent it, but the general person, we'll get the word out, but it'll take a while for it. It's more of a control thing.
No,
for
I
us,
understand
really.
that, and I think there's very positive reasons for you to do this, and I think it might be worth a paragraph or a half page in the newsletter that you put out
Sure,
that
I mean, we can do that
explains
in the winter. The fall is already out, so.
Right. Why has Haverford changed its requirement from 25 to 15? Because some people may take the knee-jerk reaction and, they're trying to stop us from doing this. And you can explain, we know better who's using it. We can prepare better, and we stop
Exactly.
disputes. Yeah.
If anything, it actually is to try and design so that the casual person from the neighborhood showing up doesn't get there and find the park taken over, That's it. Yes, but certainly we can put it in the winter newsletter.
All right.
There being none, Mrs. Whittle?
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Yes, the motion passes. We're now back up to item number 13, which is resolution number 2067, 2017. It's document instruction.
Mr. President,
Mr. Oliva.
motion to adopt resolution number 2067, 2017 by the Board of Commissioners of the Township of Haverford, County of Delaware, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in accordance with the municipal records manual cited above, hereby authorizes the disposition of the attached public records.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McGarity. Discussion? Comment? And this is housekeeping, right? The destruction. Okay, please take the roll.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. McGarry?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. Connell?
Yes. Motion carries. Item number 14 is the construction manager services.
Mr. President.
Was that Mr. Holmes?
No, go ahead.
McGarity?
Go ahead.
We have, there's a variance from the agenda. Our motion is to approve additional months of the construction phase fee for Reynolds construction managers for our new municipal services building. Our previously published agenda and last week's work session discussed a request for a 3-month extension at $18,000 per month for a total of $54,000. I am pleased to report that today a letter was sent by mail and electronic mail to Assistant Township Manager Ms. Hanlon Widdop, revising that request to 2 months of the construction phase fee and reducing the per month fee to $15,000. So the request is for a $30,000 commitment for the township for additional work for the construction manager, subject, as a consequence of the additional working days that have gone on in the contract construction. I'm sorry, in the project construction. So the motion is to approve 2 months of construction phase fee at $15,000 per month for a total of $30,000 to Reynolds construction managers for the new municipal services building.
I'll second that, but I'd like to also give Lori Hanlon Widdop a lot of credit for banging heads with these people. If it had stayed at $54,000, I would have voted no, and I wouldn't have seconded, but Lori got it reduced to what it should be. Thank you, Lori.
Okay, so it's reduced to $15,000 and for a total of $30,000.
It would seem that the power of positive thinking and persuasive advocacy might just have gotten through to these folks, so good job, Ms. Hanlon Widdop.
Contract, though? I thought it was a fixed fee contract.
No, it was monthly.
Well, we approved a fee based on a certain number of months. I mean, this has now gone, they want 60 extra. Are we at 124 at this point? So there is compromise reflected in how far it's gone. That's a recognition on everybody's part that blame can be fairly allocated out over several areas with regard to the delay. And the 15,000 to 18,000, the reduction to 15,000, I think, is also a manifestation of the goodwill of our construction manager trying to continue to do a good job.
Hear, hear. Please take the roll.
I think, did I get your vote, Mr. Lewis? But, I'm sorry. Mr. McCluskey.
Yeah. Start with Mr. McCluskey.
I go first tonight. Yes.
I thought I was in the middle of the vote, I'm sorry. Mr.
Yes.
Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
And Mr. Connell.
Yes, the motion carries with those changes. Next on the agenda is the continuation of citizens forum for non-agenda items. Is there anyone all the way over on this side of the room?
Is there anyone over on this side of the room?
Everybody sleep.
On this side, first
Sure,
row,
Connor?
second row?
Good evening. My name is Kevin O'Neill, and I live at 144 Marybrook Drive. I want to speak to what District Attorney Jack Whelan and Councilman Dave White spoke earlier in the meeting regarding the heroin task force here in Delaware County. As many of you are aware, I own and operate my own criminal law practice here in Delaware County, and at times I'm often on the other side of things with Mr. Whelan on a lot of different cases. However, when it comes to the heroin task force, I'm very much in step with him. I have worked with a number of clients that, very similar to what Mr. White touched on, that are accused of these petty crimes, low-level thefts, things of that nature, where there are victims in our community. And a lot of them are as a result of their addiction to opioids and heroin. I've seen the toll that it's taken on many families of my clients. I absolutely support the heroin task force and advocate for my clients to enter into those programs as quickly as they can to reach a level of sobriety that they can come back into the neighborhoods and society in of itself. I can't advocate enough for that heroin task force. One of my first clients, when I opened up my own practice in 2014, was a person from Haverford Township, similarly accused of petty crimes, but unfortunately was facing jail time. We were able to take advantage of the heroin task force. And I tell this story to clients over and over again that my role starts off as criminal defense attorney and turns into basically therapy sessions for families and for loved ones, and helping them through their addiction problems. One of my first clients, like I said, was from Haverford Township, and we went from a family that was at its breaking point and an individual that had very high likelihood of overdosing to a point later where he is now giving talks to NA groups. He has people under him that he sponsors, and that is a large part due to the heroin task force here in Delaware County. The one thing they didn't mention was the Certified Recovery Specialist phone number that I wanted to mention. I give this out to family members here in Delaware County. It's 610-497-7278. They have been invaluable to a number of my clients as well as the families of my clients in dealing with this heroin epidemic. I see things on the very front lines of it where I see victims of this crisis as well as their family members, and I really do respect the work that Mr. White and Mr. Whelan do here for this county. So I just want to talk about that a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in that row? Next row? Last row? Nobody, okay. Thank you very much for coming up tonight and expressing yourself, and thank you for your comments. It's it's one of those things right now where no matter what you do, it's still not enough. So there's always more to do. Next on the agenda then is under new business, and I will ask if Mr. Vice President, if you'll make a motion to direct the solicitor to enter into a consent agreement with Crown Castle LLC regarding the installation of DOS nodes.
Okay, if I can read this. Motion to direct the solicitor to enter into a agreement with Crown Castle LLC regarding the installation of DOS nodes.
Nodes.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Siegel and Mr. Solicitor.
You want me to explain a little bit about
Yes,
it?
please.
Yeah, this is really, I mean, when we say installation, it's really a reinstallation on a couple poles. The DOS nodes are the boxes that go on the poles. And there's been some recent case law that really directs us as a township and takes away our ability to fight them too vigorously, that unless there's really some egregious wrong, you can't, you have to let them increase the size of their boxes. We had some property committee meetings on this where we, I think there was three relocations. They're not really relocations, they're resizing, where there were three of them. Two were granted and one was not. There was some discussions going back and forth. rather than a normal type of appeal that you would see in these things, because it's governed by the FCC. The appeal goes to the federal court. The matter was pending in federal court. The case law has come down, as well as regulations from the FCC. We've worked out an agreement whereby there's no payment of any money of any type for our prospective use here. And in fact, they've even talked about putting some additional sound barriers and things in the box. So on the whole, it would be my recommendation that we accept the agreement.
Mr. Holmes?
Uh,
I see you there.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. President. I just, this is, it's my duty as a member of the bar, it's my duty as the 6th Ward Commissioner to do what's best for the township. And in this circumstance, the recommendation of our solicitor and our decision as a board, and I'm involved in that decision to enter into a consent decree and allow this stuff to go forward, is the right thing to do for the township. But like nasty medicine that you have to take, I'm taking this medicine right now because the law and the courts don't give me any opportunity to prevent Crown Castle from reinstalling one site in one neighborhood that generated enough sensitivity for the property committee, completely independent of me, to make the decision not to do this. So I do vote yes, but I bite the insides of my cheeks while saying so. And with regard to anything where we do have discretion and the law allows it, I'm not going to forget this lawsuit anytime soon.
And just for the public, it's those boxes that you see on poles that appear in various locations. You'll typically see them on the state roads because the state just grants the requests, but federal law preempts, which means it prohibits the township from basically taking any action or turning them down. If they apply, we have no choice under the law but to approve it, and that's what happened here. We tried to help a situation, but were unable because the way Congress wrote the law, local municipalities have zero ability to do anything but say yes.
But this does not mean that constituents shouldn't fight these. This does not mean we shouldn't engage in the analysis we did, and I will never say that what the property committee did here was wrong. I'll just say right now the law doesn't support what the right thing to do was.
One other thing that I should mention before we go is that we did discuss this in a lot more detail than I explained here at an executive session, so I just don't want any of the public to think I'm just throwing these ideas out to you.
I didn't violate any non-disparagement clause, did I, in the agreement?
Yeah.
And I concur with that, because I know that in the 8th Ward, there were several of them up there, and then it was told that, oh, they'll never get bigger, and of course, they got bigger.
Well, this is another example of what we were saying last month about the utilities get away with anything they want to do.
Yeah, they do. Literally.
That doesn't mean you have to vote with them, though. I mean, I'm not going to.
Right. It doesn't, and this is just that these things are cyclical. I mean, right now it's progress. People want better cell coverage. There's going to come a time when, when that discretion gets back in our hands, and when that discretion gets back in our hands, that discretion is going to be exercised properly.
Right, and I certainly don't want another lawsuit to come before the township again and have to pay out money unnecessarily. Mrs. Widow, would you please take the vote?
It's worth noting that this is a consent decree to put this thing in its place. The township paid
This one
nothing.
wasn't. Yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
Mr. McCloskey?
Yes.
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 Mr. McGarity?
No.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. Connell?
Yes. So the motion carries. Next on the agenda is other business, and we will start, unfortunately, due to a family matter, Mr. D'Amelio could not make it here tonight. I hope all things go well. We will start with Mr. McCluskey.
Thank you.
not used to going first, but let me first just echo some of the thoughts that were given at the beginning of this meeting about the events of September 11th, and hopefully we can always take a moment on this day and every day to remember those tragic events. I really think it is, the day when I was younger, people used to talk about the day Kennedy was shot, and everybody remembered where they were. September 11th really is this generation's day Kennedy was shot. I mean, it's something that has shaped our country for the last 16 years, and I think it'll probably continue to shape our country for the next 30 years. And hopefully we can take a tragic event like that and turn it into a positive and make ourselves a safer and more free country. Along the same lines, on another downer, as somebody mentioned earlier, there's just a lot going on right now with the hurricanes in Texas and Florida, and obviously our thoughts and prayers are with all of them. My in-laws are in Tampa right now, and they evacuated to Kissimmee, I believe, outside Orlando, so just moving in west. But it really is there's some dangerous circumstances going on to people who are struggling just to have lights on right now. So we should all keep that in mind and keep them all in our thoughts and prayers. A few just local business as the township continues. I did want to announce on behalf of the senior committee, they have an event scheduled for September 19th at 10 a.m. It'll be at the CREC. It's being called a Haverford Township Senior Workshop. It's to provide information about services, information about Medicare. There's going to be a presentation on identity theft, and there'll be a presentation about Surrey services. You can email John Grock of the senior committee to reserve a spot. Attendance is going to be limited for this event to township residents. The senior committee has really, in the past year, really organized and is looking to have events like this in the future moving forward. So this is the first one, but I encourage anybody, and particularly all seniors in the township, to go to the CREC on September 19th at 10 a.m. There'll be some good information shared that day, and we're going to be asking for feedback as to future events and sort of topics that we can discuss in the future. And I say we by the senior committee. Commissioner Wexler always points out that it's ironic that I'm the chair of the senior committee, given my age. But this will be a good event, and I encourage everybody to attend. Commissioner Dan Siegel and I will have the biannual constituent meeting in this room on October 18th. All residents of the 3rd and 4th Ward are encouraged to attend. And as always, if you have any questions or anything you would like us to address, please feel free to email either of us. I mentioned earlier when the district attorney was here, the town hall meeting run by HADA on September 27, 2017 at 7 o'clock in the high school auditorium. I do encourage everybody to attend. It was mentioned that this is something that impacts everyone in one way or another. Even if you don't think it does, I guarantee you there's someone on your block or there's a family member somewhere where it does. And it's in all of our interests as a community to deal with this head on, to help address the problem with clear eyes. So I hope you can all join us. I've spoken to the father who lost a son, and the woman who's in recovery, and their stories really are very powerful. And the courage to share those stories in a high school auditorium is something that I don't think you want to miss. And then just finally on a positive note, in the 3rd Ward over the weekend, there was the 7th Annual Haverford Music Festival. I know most of the commissioners were there, a lot of Haverford Township employees, residents, everyone seemed to have a great time. The weather was great. And just a huge thank you to all the volunteers who got there early in the morning and were still there when I walked home at night at 10:30 cleaning up. The Haverford Civic Council goes to great lengths to put on that event, and it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of time planning, and it's a lot of real hard work. And it's all volunteer based, and all the proceeds go to local organizations, local charities that help make this community a better place. So to everyone who had a hand in that event, you know, thank you on behalf of myself and all the residents of the Third Ward. You know, I think it's a great community event, and I'm sure some other people will have some things to say about it, but looking forward to the 8th year. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Siegel?
Thank you, Mr. President. We've mentioned 9/11, and I really sort of thought about it today because I had to drive to Harrisburg for a Bar Association meeting and passed 3 Mile Island and I was in college when they had their meltdown, and I was evacuated. And then I realized it was 9/11, and at 9 o'clock on 9/11, I was in a plane flying over Washington, D.C., and obviously we landed safely, but it's a reminder of just how fragile life can be, and if you're in the right place or the wrong place. But getting off the plane and looking at the TV screens and having a woman say to me, that's where the World Trade Centers used to be, and I had been there a week before, was as numbing a moment as I can ever remember, and I couldn't have been more thankful that I, you know, was safe and landed safely, but that a lot of people lost their lives. So 9/11 was, you know, hits home for me. My children couldn't find out where I was for hours because there was no communication, and as old as they are, they still track me every time I'm on a plane. With the hurricanes, it's also ironic because Reverend Ryan Whitley of St. George Episcopal Church left the congregation for a new position in his native Florida on August 27th, and he and I were communicating about how he moved back to Florida where he grew up, and now he's dealing in his first days in his new position with the hurricanes, and we wish those people the best as well. I want to remind residents and business people that September 19th at 7:30 in the morning is the annual Library Business Persons Breakfast. It is a terrific opportunity to sort of mingle, to meet people, and it has been a terrific event since it started, I guess, about 3, 4, 5 years ago. I don't remember. So I encourage you to attend. There's information on the library website about the event. Next week on Wednesday evening starts Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the holy days, and that's the Jewish New Year. And I wish everyone celebrating. It starts Wednesday evening and ends on Friday at sundown. A sweet New Year, Yom Kippur. The Day of Atonement begins on Friday the 29th. Begins on Friday the 29th and ends at sundown on the 30th. And I wish everyone who observes that an easy fast. Separately, I've received a number of pieces of communication about the playground equipment that was removed from Paddock Farm Playground and from Elwell and Merwood because the Parks and Rec Department deemed those pieces unsafe and it wasn't cost effective or practical to repair them. I know that one piece of equipment in one of those parks was replaced. We are working with Mr. Denny to assure that the other playground equipment in Paddock and elsewhere is also replaced. They are not inexpensive, so they have to be budgeted. They're not something that you can simply just purchase. So we are working on that as part of next year's budget. Also, on September 26th at 7 p.m., at the sort of request and in memory of Jan Marie Rushforth, there will be a program at the Community Recreation Center called Climate Solution, and it's also sponsored by Citizens Climate Lobby, the organization she recorded the video for, and it will feature Dr. Kirsten Findell of NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Dr. Findell has credentials that are remarkable if you read them, and is known as an engaging speaker who will discuss the issues relating to climate change in an accessible and informative way. I encourage everyone to attend. That's the 26th at 7. And finally, a reminder that this Sunday the 17th, and not Saturday, at 9 a.m. from 9 to 3, is a hazardous waste collection date at Penn State's Brandywine campus in Media. And I thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Lewis?
Thank you, Mr. President. My monthly update on College Avenue Bridge. We were fortunate in getting SEPTA to agree to close down the line completely this past weekend. You recall they were going to close it down for 2-hour increments, which was not a very efficient way to take down the bridge span. But we were successful in convincing SEPTA to close down the line over the full weekend. And if you drove, I actually was out there on Sunday morning, and the entire bridge span over the railroad right away, or the railroad line, is now down. So, which means the abutments have to be taken down. But now that the bridge span is down, I think we're going to see hopefully much more progress being made on the reconstruction of that bridge. Trying to get an update from PennDOT as to the new projected completion date, but I haven't gotten that as of yet. But as I get more information, I'll certainly pass it along. But that is encouraging. At least we're seeing some progress there. Finally, also want to put a pitch in for the Haverford Township Adult School. They are a wonderful organization celebrating 60 years of service to the township. They are looking currently for some new board members, and when this board interviews in January for the various boards and commissions that we fill for the township, there's just incredible talent that we see that comes forward, steps forward to volunteer, and I'm hoping that some people in the community will step forward. If you have experience in social media, finance, business, marketing, fundraising, anything like that, and you want to give back to your community, please consider serving on the board of directors of the Haverford Township Adult School. And you can reach out to them through their website, haverfordadultschool.org, if you're interested in doing so. So I'd urge you to consider that as a good volunteer opportunity. Lastly, I would just say, I guess I found this meeting a little frustrating tonight, in that it seemed to me that we a lot of the issues that a lot of the agenda items, we had a lot of new questions, a lot of new suggestions, all of which I think are great. But the purpose of the work session is to discuss the issues thoroughly, try to get all the questions and suggestions, recommendations, nits, changes on the table. So these meetings are not 2.5, 3.5 hours long. So I would just urge my colleagues that we make productive use of the work sessions going forward. And to the extent that we have situations where we didn't see it in ordinance, like the Barnhard backyard hen ordinance, I quite frankly don't think it should be on the agenda. We should just defer it until the next work session, but so we don't have an hour discussion on something that we haven't. Actually, we should reserve those for the work session agenda. So just urge my colleagues to take that into consideration. There's a purpose for the work sessions, and I hope that we can be more efficient with our regular board meetings going forward. So that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Holmes?
Mr. President, just a couple things. I want to reiterate Mr. McCluskey's thanks to everybody who volunteered for the music festival. It was a terrific event. My only presence there was as somebody enjoying it and not somebody who worked on it, so I appreciate all the work everybody did. After 16 years, there's not a lot I can say that I haven't said before about 9/11. My children, three of them were born, and the fourth one hadn't yet arrived in the world that has been substantially changed by that. I think that tragedy, as so many tragedies do, revealed yet again to the world just how our society responds and how people come together, and the stories of heroism and the stories of love that are associated with that day are a reminder that we really are a unique place in this world. So I pray for everybody who died that day, and everybody whose lives were profoundly affected by that day. So that's all I have tonight. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay,
Mr. McGarity?
I'll keep it short. Just a reminder what Mr. Brooks was talking about, the Haverford Township Day on October the 7th. A Saturday, it starts off with Timmy, the 5K run. What's that, 7 o'clock?
It starts at 8:30.
8:30, okay.
Registration starts at 7:30.
Okay, at the middle school. So registration 7:30, 5K at 8:30 at the middle school. And basically, it's a long day. Let's hope we get the weather that Mr. McCluskey got, and we'll have 16,000 people out there.
I got a few things.
And basically, the same thing that Mr. Brooks was talking about, the Grange Estate has a lot of things coming up, especially with the trains. The kids bring them down in the first week of December, and they'll see quite a display down there at the Grange Estate. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Wexler.
Yes, I mean, I'd like to mention, Mr. McCluskey put it in perspective when he talked about, where you were the day that Kennedy died. I always remember the discussion with my mother. She always knew where she was, December 7, 1941, and we've had those issues in our life. Having worked in Manhattan and worked in that building for 3 years, it was, as soon as it went down, you knew that a lot of people had lost their lives. It was there, but I reflect back on my age. I remember when Kennedy was shot. D-Day was a little bit before my time. I was an outgrowth of that, I guess. But then when Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon in July of 1969 is another, good thing. And then the Challenger blowing up, 1986, I guess it was January 28th, yeah. And then September 11th. So our lives are there. But today, watching all the specials and hearing the comments, like similar to what Mr. Connell made at the beginning today, it's just gut-wrenching to see the families and the fallout of that. And hopefully our first responders here are just as brave and we get the same thing. So, but our hearts go out to those families. Thank you to the Music Fest. And then also September 28th is my constituent meeting. And this is the time I'll request to the township, somebody from, Laura, you can pass on to Larry when he gets back. I'll need at least somebody from the police department to address speeding on Township Line. It's got resin there, so ask for chiefs here, but somebody from the police department, and then also somebody can discuss the status of our streets. The Treaty, Warrior, Friendship, and Flintlock have become the streets of Beirut again with all the work in there. I know we've talked about it, but I have a ton of people. I think over the last 4 days, I've received at least 20 emails complaining about the streets and some of the work that's been done, and then we just paved the street, and it's been relined again for new aqua work that wasn't on the list. It's crazy. So that will come up, and I'll probably need armed support for that evening. It's September 28th at the Bon Air Fire Hall at 7:30 p.m. And then it's too late for the television, but tomorrow is the Senior Expo at Drexel Brook, presented by State Representative Santoro. So if you know anybody there, gets out. It's most of the day. It starts around 9 o'clock with breakfast and goes till about 2 o'clock. Every state agency, any agency that can assist with seniors will be there tomorrow at the Drexel Brook in Drexel Hill, PA. And that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Oliva?
All right, well, I'd like to, again, reiterate what everyone has said about 9/11. I do remember that day very clearly, as everyone else does. It was gut-wrenching to watch that on television. Excuse me. The Have a Good Times mailed out this week with details on the lecture that Dan spoke about for the January Rushforth series, and obviously many other rec activities that was mailed out this week. I'd also like to thank Kevin, as well as everybody who spoke about the heroin issue. The heroin issue is taking a lot of lives, and whatever we can do to stop that, and the fact that we are now actively trying to stop it rather than trying to put people in jail. We are trying to figure out a way to get these people help, and I have to take my hats off to Jack figuring out a way to do that. So getting people into treatment rather than putting them into jail, that does not solve the issue. We need to get these people treatment, and real treatment, not a day or two or a week, but a month and more than that, because you really are not ready to take baby steps in rehab over heroin for a year is what I've been told. So It's a real problem, and we need to focus on a real solution, not just putting people behind bars. It's not a solution. I also wanted to thank the Music Festival Committee. I worked out there, volunteered. It was a great time. I love all those guys. Fantastic group there who works. I'm not going to mention any names because there's so many people who work so hard on this project, but there was a lot of lifting and carrying and putting into pickup trucks and all that sort of stuff. And I take my hats off to these people because there's only a handful of these people. When you sit there on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, there are 20 people, 15 people standing there when there was 10,000 who went to this event. So I take my hat off to those 20 people who actually, do the cleanup and all that sort of stuff. It's amazing that those people really care that much to be out there. So I get a little choked up when I talk about 9/11. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's take a moment. Gearing into with 9/11, being a like member of a first responder and being a father of a first responder, I at a moment's notice, life is here, life is gone. So in this township, we have volunteers who answer the call, and we have a great police department. I want to thank the Chief of Police, Chief Viola, who is also a life member with the fire department. I won't go back how many years. And he is also the chief of our police department. So I give a heartfelt thank you, and to Commissioner Wexler, who was also a first responder, who answered the calls in the middle of the night, what have you. Thank you very much from our community and from me personally. It does hit home, Mario. You're absolutely right, and we should never forget. It is every bit of that. Kennedy, Pearl Harbor, it's all of it. And we can never forget. And I hope people display that all the time when they fly the flag. I have a couple things here, and only a couple because I am checking off that hazardous waste, Brandywine, September 17th. Right, Commissioner? Thank you very much for that one. And also, the newsletters are out on the street. The 8th Ward newsletter's out. I'm assuming that all you guys have sent your newsletters out too. Thank you, Mrs. Widdop, for that. And who's? Kelly? Thank you very much for putting that newsletter together. Greatly appreciated. In the 8th Ward, we are looking at September 16th at the Grange. That I'm sure people have seen the Antique Roadshow, and that antique appraiser, Michael Ivanovich, will be there to appraise whatever antique that you have. So if you have an opportunity, please go down to the Grange on September 16th from 1 to 3 and enjoy it. Also at the Grange on September 23rd, the home brew hang from the greatest civic association that is in the 8th Ward, and that's the Penfield Civic Association from 7 to 10, September 23rd. Go on to Facebook and like them, and get your tickets, please, for the home brew hang. My kudos out there to Josh Angel, who is Eagle Scout Project, deals with planting 20 or 50, I think 50 trees in the Powder Mill Park coming up this year. So what a huge project, a great project to Josh Angel, and a great project for Powder Mill Park and the people, the residents. Can't have enough trees. And lastly, I want to say, well, schools are open, so please drive careful out there. And Monday, October 2nd, there is a work session, and that is correct? Right. Yep, there is a work session October 2nd on Tuesday, October 10th, will be the next commissioners' meeting because Monday is the observation of Columbus Day. So we will not be here. It'll be October 10th.
Mr. President, the reason I asked about October 2nd, I didn't see that on our calendar. I know we've had conflicts in the past in the October meetings, and I looked back at the calendar and realized that we don't list our work sessions on the official township calendar. I haven't several months back, and I think we should. We want the public to see the work session the same, even though they don't participate, they certainly are invited to watch. So I think it's important that we make sure our calendar going forward marks out our work sessions as well as our regular sessions.
I know I do put that out on the 8th word contact, but yes, and that's why I have it here, that we could certainly put that on the website. I know it's on a calendar. I think it's on a calendar, but I don't think it's directly on the website.
Not on the township calendar. I just looked it up.
No?
It's not in upcoming events, and it's not in the monthly breakdown.
Okay. Last year, I think because of religious commitments, that's why we didn't have it, but this year, nothing falls that way, so we do have it. We don't have a work session in November.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Oliva, you have
I just
something?
have one thing I forgot about. The September Park Board meeting is moved to the CREC because we're doing something in here on September 19th. So the Park Board meeting will be at the CREC on September 19th.
Not the 26th.
Not the 26th.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And
Thank you, Chris.
I will take a motion
So moved.
to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight.